Being someone in their late 20s whose earliest gaming memories are of a Speedy Gonzales game and some Dreamcast stuff, there are a lot of classic franchises I've never played. Stuff that was more for systems that I never grew up with, but a lot of these also never bothered me. I think I can go my whole life without playing StarCraft, and maybe one day I'll play the original Dragon Quest games, but I'm in no rush. But when games from a bygone era suddenly come back into the spotlight today, whether it be via a remake or a sequel, I kinda take notice. I like to keep an open mind, and I'm always willing to try a new game if it looks cool. In 1998, BioWare released the original Baldur's Gate, a CRPG that takes the fun of tabletop Dungeons & Dragons and puts it on your computer with a total of 5 wacky discs. You know, for the longest time, I didn't know what a CRPG was. I just thought, a JRPG is an RPG from Japan, so what would a CRPG be? So I was assuming the C had to be referring to a place in the world. A Czechoslovakian role-playing game? No, it's computer. A computer role-playing game. This feels more appropriate for today, doesn't it? Now, after a successful launch, BioWare would release a follow-up in 2001 to even greater success, making someone like me, who is completely unfamiliar with the gaming community and the zeitgeist of that year, to not understand why they would wait 22 years to release a follow-up. And then years and years after the follow-up, we were treated to a third game courtesy of Larian Studios. Again, I had never heard of the types of games they make, let alone played one, but the thunderous reaction Baldur's Gate 3 received upon launch was one of those times I couldn't help but take notice. Now, I played the entire game with my player 2 Nick twice, so I'll be showing footage from both playthroughs. Nick also helped me write this video, like a lot of it. This video would not have been possible without him, and I know for a fact this review is going to be kind of scattered, but with a game this big, it can't be helped. I'm going to be giving my thoughts on the story first before we get into any gameplay, and I'll be tackling the story one act at a time for the sake of my sanity. That might be tested anyway if the length of this video is any indication. Man. We're really doing this. Well, if you have any interest in one section over the other, feel free to use the chapter selection I've left in the description. But if you're ready to get these dice rolling, let's jump in. This is Baldur's Gate 3. Let's get this out of the way now. I'm not a seasoned D&D player, so I don't know exactly where our adventure takes place. A quick Google search enlightens me that it's in Western Faerun. So yeah, high above Western Faerun, we bear witness to a nautiloid aircraft escaping from a Githyanki attack. Operating the nautiloid are the Illithid, a psychic, hive-minded group of invaders best known as the Mind Flayers. And the Githyanki are an overly proud race of otherworldly beings locked in a drawn-out war with the Illithid. The Gith, as the Githyanki are also called, are giving the nautiloid a run for its money, and with the craft having to use its warping capabilities just to have a fighting chance. Within the struggling vessel, a hero, or 4, awaken from their stasis pods. The Illithid have been kidnapping individuals and infecting them with the Mind Flayer parasites to add them to their ranks and transform them into fully realized Mind Flayers. The player's characters awaken to see that they've retained their free will even though it's clear that they all have a visitor in their noggins. Something is at play, but the group isn't sure what it is. Our party consisted of my tiefling, Srein, and Nick's half-elf, Tanyth. As they make their way through the nautiloid, they recruit the Githyanki warrior Lae'zel, and the internet's new favorite goth GF, Shadowheart. Everyone makes it to the control room and are able to use the ship's warp function to escape. Srein then appears in mid-air and falls a great height before being miraculously stopped by an unknown force.
That's weird.
After collecting Shadowheart from a nap in the sand and Lae'zel from a mob of racists, the party runs into a few more friendly faces. Gale, the wizard who was stuck in a portal and really just wants someone to talk to. Astarion, a vampire thief who isn't to be trusted. Will, the goody two-shoes with daddy issues. Karlach, the fiery muscle mommy with golden retriever energy. And the only one we really never talk to, 2, Halsin. But everyone in the group seems to carry some common ground here. They've all been infected with an Illithid tadpole, the same type of mind flayer parasite that will no doubt be bad news for everyone here if left unchecked. Thus, it's within all of their best interest to venture together for the time being, shortly finding themselves at the Emerald Grove. Here the party finds a group of refugee tieflings trying to make their way to Baldur's Gate. But the problem is they're expecting an attack from a throng of goblins and their leader Minthara. After going and meeting with the Dark Elf, she informs the party that they are all known as True Souls, or someone with a mind flayer parasite in their head. This inspires Minthara to extend an olive branch to the party, asking them to join her in exterminating the tieflings in the name of the Absolute. One of the big things about Baldur's Gate 3, the biggest thing, is the player's freedom of choice. Not only in the way that you can get through combat encounters, which we'll talk about in depth later on, but also the way you can move through the story. Dialogue options will appear in just about every one of the thousands of conversations the characters have. Some options will have an attribute or religion or origin in brackets. The religion and origin options are usually just to add some more flavor text to the conversation, but the ones pertaining to attributes will unlock different branches or options in the conversation. The player can see how much of an advantage or disadvantage the character's stats will grant for any particular choice. For a quick example, Srein is a timid cleric scholar. He's not terribly wise on his own, but he is educated and knows how to fix a wound right up. He's also a fit boy, always making sure to do his stoutness exercises, meaning he would get bonuses on athletic options. Tanyth, on the other hand, is extremely charismatic. If we needed someone to talk our way out of a situation, he was our guy. And Rose, my cute girl insert from the second playthrough, is not to be trifled with. She would have people pissing themselves, she was so intimidating. But in regards to our story, this can make progressing through it ridiculously unique and infinitely replayable. There are plenty of small choices you'll be presented with as the story progresses, but there are also plenty of opportunities for big decisions. In Act 1, the big decision is choosing whether or not to save the tieflings and fend off the goblins, or help Minthara by betraying the grove in the name of the Absolute. In the first playthrough, we were always on brand as the good guys. We were only in it for the greater good and whatever saved the most lives. As such, when we met Minthara at the goblin camp, we knew we couldn't let her destroy the grove. So we quickly, and on our own, devised a plan to gain her trust and lure her to the grove and straight into a trap. With the help of the tieflings, the party fended off the goblins, but Minthara didn't fall to the party's blades. No, one of her own goblins had plans for that poor woman. Holy crap. This freed up the refugees to make their way to Baldur's Gate. Continuing past the grove, they stumble upon the Underdark, a massive subterranean chasm that's home to many different walks of life. After helping a race of mushroom people solve their Dwagar problem, everyone moves on to the Grimforge. Here they find more Dwagar, which are like dwarves, but not exactly. They're being led by this true soul named Nier. There are Dwagar trapped on the other side of this cave-in, but time is running out because of a deadly gas leak behind the rubble. So it's in everyone's best interest to get them out. But I accidentally pissed them off, hopping the party into a fight with him and the rest of the Dwagar in the forge. It didn't go well at all, so I loaded the save and went back to camp to try another tactic. Only when the party came back, who's dead on the ground? Nier. All the Dwagar were gone, and Nier was dead on the floor, assumedly from the gas leak. Well, and from there, the party moves past the Grimforge and into the shadow-cursed lands. But I say we put a pause on the main plot for a moment, and instead, let's rewind and go over the myriad of things the party can see themselves getting wrapped up in throughout Act 1. Starting with the party members we got to know. By this point, Lae'zel is cold and distant, not really trusting any of the members of the party. She is the first person the player meets who seems to have any idea of how to get rid of the tadpoles. She has a plan and would appreciate it if the group would stick to it. Lae'zel is one of the party members that unfortunately falls by the wayside as far as our eventual party comp goes. It's a shame too, because from what I've seen of other people playing this game, she's a great choice. But for right now, her only concern is getting back to her people so they can help with this demonic sperm in everyone's head. If there's one thing she doesn't like though, it's Shadowheart.
Ooh, go for it, Ross. Here with the rip.
Ooh, you know it! You know it! This dark-haired cutie patootie is probably even more of a closed-off jerk than Lae'zel, but it's for a good reason, as we soon see. As the party walks up to the goblin camp, they... Ah! This unknown, omnipotent voice grants a vision of 3 silhouettes that will become far more important later. Shadowheart fits into all of this by using this mysterious artifact to push the voice's power back, with the whole party then looking at her like,
"The hell was that?"
Shadowheart has been sent on a covert mission to retrieve this artifact. She belongs to the cult of the goddess Shar. The worshippers of Shar are very secretive, so it's imperative that no one discovers this artifact or her true goal. She desperately wants to impress Lady Shar, even going so far as to place her memory of her life before this mission on ice. Aside from a strangely specific memory of being attacked by wolves as a young girl and being rescued by the followers of Shar, she only truly remembers the here and now. She's even blocked from knowing her real name. The only way to get her memories back is to make it back to Baldur's Gate with this artifact. That is all Shadowheart cares about, leading to her being cold and aloof. She's obviously just as, if not more, uncomfortable with all this than the group is. She does try to put on a tough face, but the wonderful voice performance and writing tell another story. Then we have the Dream Visitor. After a certain amount of time has passed, this person will somehow reach the player character in their dreams, even revealing themselves as the one who saved the main character from falling out of the Nautiloid. But even still, this guy says that he can protect Srein from becoming a mind flayer.
"I will keep it from consuming you. But for the sake of both of us, you must learn to wield it."
Yo. He explains that the cult of the Absolute is spreading because of the infected individuals hearing the voice in their head and believing it to be a god.
You must discover the source of the magic that controls the parasites before that happens. The cultists are gathering at Moonrise Towers.
He's very knowledgeable, but at this point in time, there are obviously things that this dude is leaving out. But for now, Srein has no real choice but to believe him and go along with it. Then we have Gale.
Hello.
After making it a small way up the beach, the virgining party can run into this portal where a hand is reaching out. Obviously, someone is in need of help. In our good playthrough, obviously Srein pulls this man out, only to learn that Gale is the biggest lost puppy on the Sword Coast.
Are you listening to my dialogue? Yeah, he sounds like a virgin with a cat.
This is the exact reason the evil bitches weren't so kind in the second playthrough.
Well met.
So Gale has this small little condition where if he doesn't consume powerful magical artifacts every so often, he'll supposedly blow up and take the entire surrounding area / possibly the continent with him. He also misses his cat. After whatever happened to make him a walking magic nuke, he got very depressed and locked himself away, only being consoled by her. That's all I need to hear. Yeah, Gale is another that just kind of falls by the wayside for us. Then there's Astarion. This pale twink comes across as the most hostile, dangerous individual at first. Initially, the guy attempts to kill the player's character no matter what options you pick. This leads to an immediate distrust. He is infected like the rest of the group, so he supposedly needs their help just as much as they could use his. Depending on how things go, he'll eventually open up to the player, revealing that he's indeed a vampire, yet somehow he's not affected by the sun. He also continues to mention someone he refers to as Cazador. Throughout Act 1, Astarion is very much playing his cards close to his chest. But when on the subject of Cazador, who's later revealed to be his vampire master, he's immediately on the mental back foot, saying that his vampire master is far stronger than anyone could ever dream, claiming that if he wanted Astarion back, the poor twink wouldn't have a choice. It gives off heavy abusive relationship vibes. Like, obviously Astarion was manipulated or tortured by Cazador in one way or another, but even after escaping this guy's powerful grasp, they still live in the vampire's head rent-free. The tank of a druid Halsin was not in our party for very long, if at all, so yeah, no, I didn't get the bear cutscene. Sorry to disappoint you. Will, the Sword of the Coast, a beacon of good and justice, also incredibly vanilla from the outside looking in. Didn't mess with him at all in the first playthrough, and in the second run, we took his head off.
Fuck
you, Will. The only points of interest for this dude is that he's the son of the current ruler of Baldur's Gate. He has a pact with a demon named Mizora who has tasked him with hunting down a devil nearby, and that devil is our last party member, Karlach. After meeting her, Will does come to realize that his target might not be the monster his mistress claimed she was, choosing to spare her from his blade. It doesn't take long for Mizora to come knocking though, and when she realizes her contract has been breached, Will has to pay up.
Will burns in the fires of Avernus. The lightning storms of Dis strike his flesh. His soul passes through each layer of the hells, gaining their essence and their torment
Mizora straight up turns Will into the very thing he swore to hunt, a full-blooded devil. Will, as I've stated, is kind of a boring nobody on his own. He's got some daddy issues we'll cover in a sec, but he's not all that interesting until Mizora shows up. She has such control over him, and learning that his power, and therefore his fame, comes from a devil puts such an interesting spin on who is supposed to be the coast's greatest hero. And as for Karlach, this fiery tiefling is distressed when you first meet her. A strike force from the first layer of hell is hunting her down to bring her back. See, Karlach was imprisoned by a demon named Zariel long ago and has been the general in the Hell's war between the devils and demons. She somehow escaped on board the Nautiloid, but now, as we see, there are people hunting her down to bring her back to her captor Zariel. Or you can do what the evil bitches did.
Oh.
But one thing that this scenario immediately points out is Karlach's immense sense of justice. She will take any opportunity she can to help out or save someone in need. She's extremely relieved when the party comes along to help her escape the cultists, with the entire party then vowing to keep her safe from Zariel. While being a champion of an army might have somewhat of a nice ring to it, she was more so Zariel's slave. After witnessing Karlach in battle, the Archdevil liked what she saw but wanted more, outfitting Karlach with an infernal engine, creating her own indentured general, if you will. The engine makes her a problem for anyone on the other side of her blade, but it's not all sunshine and rainbows for her. While outside the Hells, Karlach's engine kicks into overdrive, burning much hotter than usual. The longer she stays, the hotter it will burn, eventually consuming her if she doesn't return. Just one of the many ways in which Zariel keeps Karlach on a tight leash. This means that the clock is ticking to either find some way to fix her problem or make her way back to the Hells without Zariel knowing. Karlach was easily Nick's favorite character throughout the entire game. They had an inseparable bond.
I'm never going back.
I love you.
As I'm sure you'll come to see, the story in Baldur's Gate 3 is fantastic in its own right, but personally, it never hit me quite as hard as other stories I've experienced in other games. It's great, but if you ask me, the real reason you continue to play is the characters. And on top of that, the permutations of the characters. The multitude of different directions each of these people's lives can go gives an immense amount of replay value, but it also deepens them as characters. The influence you have over their stories is great in the moment because you truly feel responsible for the way their tales unfold, but it also enriches any subsequent playthroughs. You'll be able to see this even more clearly as we continue, I hope. But for now, let's take a moment to walk the road less traveled, observing some of the side activities the party can come across in Act 1. When entering the Goblin camp for the first time, the party sees that they found themselves entertainment, Volo the Bard. After talking to him, he gets distracted from his performance and the goblins get upset.
You broke him!
But then after clearing out the stronghold, you can instruct him to meet the party at their camp later on.
Volo carefully holds one of your eyes open and begins to prod uncertainly with the needle.
When he shows up, he'll say that he can remove the parasite in the player character's head, and through morbid curiosity, I let him operate. Oh my god! What follows is one of the most uncomfortable scenes in the game. It legit made me wince with how the player character squirms until...
Volo tears the pick from your brain with a violent jerk. Your eye plops down into the mud.
This dancing idiot actually takes an ice pick to Srein's skull and destroys the eye. For the rest of the game, he now has an artificial eye that, yes, lets him see invisibility, so I guess technically it's an upgrade, but I'm also down a f***ing eye! And Volo simply leaves after this. This ignited a rage within me. I will kill Volo. After overhearing some voices in this dilapidated village, the party runs into Lump the Enlighted and his two minions.
Boss Goblin give gold. We check brand. Good deal. No talk.
Lump being a very well-spoken ogre who's interested in making these travelers his next meal. But with enough intelligent discourse, he can be persuaded otherwise. Easily some of the most fun characters you can run into throughout the entire game. I loved these guys. And just a little ways down the road, there was what sounded like trouble behind these barn doors.
They were
They were too upset after the interruption to be calmed down. Thus, they had to be killed. What a way to go, though, am I right? This burning house that the group braved held Will's dad, Duke Ravengard. Come to find out that it's the Cult of the Absolute's doing, burning down this town and kidnapping the Duke, taking him somewhere known as Moonrise Tower. I'm sure Will would have been pretty upset about this, but he was never in the party to tell us. Enter Raphael. This handsome son of a bitch is the biggest, most dangerous question mark in the game. He shows up during a particular long rest and offers everyone dinner.
Which one?
Oh, 4.
Not easily rattled, I see. Good.
Whatever.
But in the second playthrough, he reveals himself to the ladies. And Astarion if you want, of course.
I feel strangely fine.
He claims he can cure the infected lot of their tadpole problem. But seeing as how he is a f***ing devil, we never trusted him. Raphael isn't much of an entity in Act 1. This encounter is just planting seeds for far greater problems later on. You know, I argued with myself on whether or not Scratch should be discussed with the main party because of the fact that he is the goodest boy on the Sword Coast. This sweet pup can be found near the grove and he's standing over a corpse. As our main man Cleric, Srein can speak with animals, discovering that this dog is waiting for his friend to wake up as he's fallen asleep. The party realizes that the man has obviously passed away one way or another, but they don't want to break the poor little guy's heart. So instead, the party simply tells Scratch that if he doesn't wake up, he can follow their scent and stay at their camp until he comes to get him. Later on, Scratch will do just that, showing up and hanging around the camp for the rest of the adventure. He'll occasionally bring you an item or two, and you can even play fetch with him, but it's still unclear what happened to his friend, and it will stay unknown for a while. There are two young men arguing with an older woman on the side of this road. Before Srein and his intelligence or Tanyth's silver tongue could resolve the situation, the two snap, attacking the heroes and the elderly woman. Unfortunately, it doesn't go well for the boys. Turns out they were just looking for their sister, and this old woman does have her. But she says Mayrina, the sister, doesn't want to be found. Auntie Ethel, as she calls herself, then disappears, leaving the party very confused. A little ways into this grotto, we come across the old woman again, and she claims that she can help out with the tadpole in our noodle for the price of an eye. Tanyth tells her that they'd rather not, only for Rose in the second playthrough to take the deal. Ethel tries but eventually fails, saying that the tadpole isn't an ordinary tadpole, but still takes the eye anyway. Why is it always my character that has their eyes maimed or destroyed? Meanwhile, Srein and Shadowheart find an illusory fireplace in this woman's dwelling, leading the party down into the basement where Ethel reveals her true form, deterring the party from proceeding any further, only for the party to do that and come across other people trapped down here and suffering from mental torment or maybe under mind control. Eventually, they find Mayrina and promise to free her, with Ethel jumping in to stop them. After a thorough ass-kicking, she tries to bargain with Srein, asking to let her keep Mayrina and the unborn child in exchange for a portion of her power. The child is what she's ultimately after, hoping to raise it as a witch and her apprentice. But the party says they'll take the girl and this new power.
Fine. Here.
Cool.
I'll not soon forget this sweetness. You have my word.
Unbeknownst to the party, however, Mayrina purposefully sought out Auntie Ethel to adopt her unborn child. Her husband had recently died and she didn't believe in her ability to raise a child on her own. But if Ethel could have taken the baby to raise her as a hag, maybe it could have had a better life. The hag was even willing to resurrect her dead husband in exchange. But that was all ruined thanks to the party. It's messed up from almost every angle, but that's what I love about these side quests. The really good ones subvert your expectations in the best way sometimes and make you really question the decisions you make. Yeah, Ethel is still a hag who captures and tortures people, but Mayrina is abandoning her unborn child simply because she's scared to be a mother? That's not the kind of shit you see in your typical RPG. While they aren't all this layered, these shades of gray are what make the side quests compelling. After Srein, Tanyth, and company had their fill in the Grove, they move into the Underdark. But they don't spend too much time here. This is mainly because Nick and I didn't know a lot about the game, thus we get stuff like poor Nier suffocating to death. But the evil bitches had way more of a time in the Grimforge. For starters, instead of Nier dying by asphyxiation, the girls told him they were going to help him get rid of these disgusting deep gnomes.
Nier does not fail.
After the Dwagar and Deep Gnome's incompetence almost got him killed, he asked for the girls' help in killing them all. But this moron is a fraud because he almost got his shit rocked immediately by the gnomes.
Good job, Nier.
Before advancing to Act 2, the evil bitches take the mountain pass, finding themselves traveling to the Githyanki Creche. Sneaking their way through, quietly taking out the Gith in their path, the party eventually comes across a Githyanki scientist. The lizard lady claims that she can remove the parasite with this advanced machine, but as we've seen twice before now, no one knows how to deal with these things, and it doesn't go well at all, with the machine blowing up spectacularly. The science lady, understandably peeved at this turn of events, asks that the party remain here as she goes and fetches some more equipment. The party obliges, but then time starts ticking away, with Rose noticing that the door was conveniently locked on them. Perfect timing though, because apparently the Gith were preparing to barge in and help with that involuntary surgery. The battle whirls through the compound and ends up in front of the chief of the Githyanki. He senses Shadowheart's artifact, but we won't hand it over. So of course, he dies, but his death summons the goddess of the Githyanki, Vlaakith. The evil bitches don't take kindly to this thing commanding them around. She continues to pressure them for the MacGuffin, but Rose isn't giving it up. I mean, really, what's she going to do anyway? I bet her hologram ass doesn't even have any real godly power.
You wish to see godhood? I wish you to end.
Oh, she is a god. Okay. Yeah, maybe it's best that we listen to her, after all. Once inside the artifact, the party discovers that the dream visitor we saw before resides in the astral plane within. The visitor pretty much just says that Vlaakith doesn't know what she's up against with the mind flayers, and in order to truly stop them, the party will need the visitor's help. They also warn that since they didn't kill them like they were instructed, the Githyanki will be after the girls. But, like... What Githyanki? The girls slaughtered the entire compound, but yeah, sure, let them try, I guess. After that, both parties, Srein and Tanyth and Rose and Nikki, make their way to Act 2. Welcome to the Shadowlands. The curse lying in wait just beyond the protection of these lanterns will make short work of any mortal that strays from the path, as this nice gentleman shows us. Oh my lord.
Bonus!
Oh.
Bonus!
The goody two-shoes quickly find shelter in this tavern, awkwardly hanging out in the fog. The druid protecting this place, Jaheira, is about to kill the guys because she snuffs out the tadpole in their craniums. Luckily, a tiefling from the Emerald Grove runs in to vouch for our heroes and stop the execution. This is the last light in, and it's being protected by a magical barrier sustained by the cleric Isabel. But this is a problem for the dark forces that move against the party, most immediately, Marcus. Oh my goodness. There are multiple ways to finish this encounter. We had trouble with it initially, leading to us failing to save Isabel. This caused the barrier she held to fall, and every single resident of the tower turned into one of those shadow monsters. The game then expects you to take all of them out immediately after finishing that huge fight with Marcus. Eventually, we were able to fend them off, saving Isabel. It's then made clear that Isabel was the target of the raid. Someone named Cleric Thorn wants her back, and he's willing to go to any lengths to get her. Cleric is immortal, as we're told, and to end this curse of darkness, he needs to become mortal once again. The party agrees to storm the Moonrise Towers to confront this Cleric and put a stop to his shenanigans. After thorough exploration of the towers, the party finds themselves at the Grand Mausoleum. Entering reveals a Sharan temple underground. This structure houses an unsettling undead figure named Balthazar. This walking corpse is the chief advisor to Cleric, claiming there's an ancient artifact within the temple, and collecting it is of the utmost importance for Cleric. Come to find out, this artifact is a person, but not just any person, the daughter of the goddess Selune, known by many as Nightsong. Nightsong has been kept under this temple for 100 years, having her immortality siphoned by Balthazar and funneled directly into Cleric. Balthazar plans to take her to General Thorm for some reason, but that never ends up happening, as Srein and the party kick Balthazar's big ass, tell Shadowheart to cool it because she really wanted to kill Nightsong, and free her in the process. Don't worry, we're going to jump into how that affects her character shortly, but right now, Nightsong reclaims her power, using it to clear the Shadow Curse from the land. I wonder if it's still called the Shadowlands now? Anyway, rallying back at the end, the party learns that a small invasion force has gathered at Moonrise, preparing to take down Cleric once and for all. Atop the tower, Srein, Tanyth, and the party are prepared to stand against Cleric the undead ruler, alongside Nightsong. The battle's going well, until Nightsong gets Thanos by one of Cleric's tentacles. He then makes his retreat into a Mind Flayer colony beneath the tower. This is where we get our first good look at the Big Three. If you'll recall the brief vision the party suffered from in Act 1, these are the silhouettes they saw. They're more of a thing in the final act, but this is where we meet the champions of the three gods of death. Cleric Thorm, Merkel's chosen. Orin, Baal's blade. and Enver Gortash, Bane's cunning pawn. The party doesn't get a chance to stop them before they combine their powers and summon the Mother Brain. This is the Big Cheese, the entity that we've been hearing all of these horrible things about, the entity behind the entire Illithid plague, and they send it directly towards the largest city on the coast, Baldur's Gate, putting their big plan into motion. The Brain warps topside, commanding its legion to march for the city. The final battle is now under preparation, but we're not done here just yet. Thorm is here for the artifact and doesn't plan on letting us get away this time. He's got the power of his god and anime on his side.
Shit.
But after an intense bout, Merkel and Ketheric are both put to death, for real this time, with the party retrieving his Netherstone. After collecting it, the Dream Visitor shows up telling us how with the power of these 3 Netherstones, the Big 3 were able to subdue the Mother Brain with the power of this crown. This magic crown is actually the reason why the Illithid are so powerful. It's inadvertently enhancing the power of the Mother Brain's offspring. This power, now resting under Baldur's Gate, could turn the city's inhabitants into mind flayers within an instant if the remaining chosen give the order. The clock is ticking now more than ever for the heroes to stop this from happening. The party says their goodbyes to the Last Light Inn and the Shadowlands, setting course for the city, where just outside the walls they catch up on some much-deserved rest.
All you need to do now is sleep. But sleep is not for you.
Oh.
The reckoning is upon us! The city thirsts for domination. March! Join!
The party is abruptly woken up by invading Githyanki from a portal opened by the artifact. Following them back into the portal reveals a squad of Githyanki pulling off some extreme parkour.
The fuck is going on here?
Parkour. But these Gith are headed towards something, that something being this pulsating skull in the astral plane. The Gith break this shield and rush the skull, and in the process, absolutely mop the floor with this Giga Chad Mind Flayer.
Don't let my form deceive you. I am the one that's been protecting you.
Oh.
I am the one that came to you in your dreams. Help me.
This is indeed the very same being that has been coming to the player character in their dreams to inform them about the situation. And the reservations we constantly felt concerning the information they were obviously leaving out make a hell of a lot more sense now. We've been working with a Mind Flayer, but not just any Mind Flayer. This Sigma Alpha Mind Flayer refers to himself as the Emperor.
I am more nervous than a man with a toupee on a trampoline.
He requests the party's help in subduing the Githyanki Prince, as his imprisonment is the only thing keeping the party's parasites at bay.
Thank you. That was too close. Don't look at me like that.
Emperor Chad Tentacle Boy gives us his tragic backstory of how he was an adventurer from Baldur's Gate when he was abducted by a Mind Flayer. And the artifact that's constantly been saving our skin, this thing found it first, and that's how he's regained his free will. He also makes the suggestion for us to completely change into Mind Flayers, but the entire party votes against that idea pretty quickly. I think bro just wants someone on his side of the fence. But that's it for now. All the pieces are in line for Act 3, but before that can happen, let's take a deeper look at the people in Act 2. When the party first arrives at the Last Light Inn, they run into Jaheira.
Oh my god, soldier. That's Jaheira. The Jaheira. Don't you know the whole story? Years ago, over a century, Jaheira was part of a group that saved Baldur's Gate from Saravok, a Baalsport trying to plunge the city into war.
Like Karlach said, Jaheira is a hero from old times. This is actually in reference to Jaheira being a recruitable party member from the first Baldur's Gate back in 1998. Initially distrustful of the party due to her snuffing out their parasites, she wants to make sure these travelers pass the vibe check before they just let them in. When she's eventually won over, it's mostly due to that strong sense of justice both she and the party carry. Even then, we didn't know what to think of Jaheira and her Russian accent at first. She came off as cold and focused, and don't get me wrong, she is. But she is just trying to protect this little pocket of survivors who are backed into a Shadowlands corner. She has a personal stake in taking Ketheric down, mainly because she's already done it before. She's killed Ketheric once before and buried him, but to see him walking around and raising an army of the undead, Jaheira is fuming to say the least.
I'm fuming!
Isabel and her Selûnite magic are the last hope the inn has against the Shadow Curse. She stays at the top and single-handedly holds back the curse and its dark creatures. And wouldn't you know, she was the target of the raid because Ketheric is her father. Small world, right? But let's talk about Ketheric. Before the events of the game, Isabel died one way or another. And stricken by grief, Ketheric abandoned his Srein faith and pleaded to the god of death Myrkul to bring Isabel back. After coming back himself and becoming Myrkul's champion, he captures the entity known as Nightsong and siphons her immortality to become... See, that joke is funny because Ketheric is voiced by J.K. Simmons, and he does an amazing job.
You serve the Absolute. You serve me. Bow, you dog.
Oh yeah, that's him.
Anyway, to add some drama to this entire thing, we find out that Nightsong and Isabel are lovers and Ketheric is homophobic. Nah, not really, but he's not a fan of his daughter dating the offspring of their goddess's rival. So, to keep his control over the situation, he has manipulated both women into thinking the other is long since dead. But thanks to our hero's interference, they're reunited and still obviously very in love. Oh, no.
Oh.
Ketheric is a very ambitious, twisted man who's kind of obsessed with winning at any cost. He has no problem lying his way into the best position to make sure that whatever he needs to happen, happens. When we see him talking with the Big Three, I couldn't help but notice how his words seem like half-truths. The Big Three's initial plan was for Ketheric to come charging into the city with his undead army. Meanwhile, Gortash would look like the hero that saved Baldur's Gate even though everything was staged. Think Syndrome and the Omni-Droids from The Incredibles if you've ever seen that movie. But once it's just him and the player's group all alone, the Madman has no problem revealing that his plan was to double-cross the Absolute's other two chosen, using the artifact for his own plans and resurrecting Srein, Tanyth, and the party as undead champions to help clear the field of Gortash and Orin. Obviously that doesn't happen, and the party makes short work of Ketheric and Myrkul. The old deranged general just bites off more than he can chew.
Nothing. I am...
Due to essentially being Death's master, he never even considers any of his plans being able to go off the rails. He's been siphoning Nightsong's power for the last century, plus he has the god of death at his beck and call. This is also what makes him easily the most interesting out of the Big Three to me. His actions and words strike fear into the hearts of anyone standing against him, and you could easily see how if he tidied up some of the finer details, things could have easily swung his way. In the second playthrough, we did all we could to actually side with him and help him with his betrayal plot, but unfortunately the game doesn't allow for that. And legitimately, this is one of my biggest complaints with this game. Ketheric is a ridiculously interesting character with huge implications for the overarching story, but no matter how much you push back or fight with the constraints of the narrative, you can't have more meaningful interactions with Ketheric. Why can you not side with Ketheric? No matter what, the party will always have to kill him, regardless of how much you help or simp over him until that time comes. He's also one of the more tragic characters in Act 2. In the Grand Mausoleum, the player can come across 3 diary entries from Ketheric himself. It's implied that his wife Melodia has already passed away, and now he's also lost Isabel. This understandably causes Ketheric the man to break, with Ketheric the undead rising from the husk. Abandoning his Srein faith for the chance to resurrect his daughter, Ketheric calls upon the assistance of this enigma of an undead master, Balthazar. With this creature's help, Isabel was returned to the living, but after seeing what her father has become, she runs away.
He told me we'd be together now. Said that Aelin was dead. I couldn't speak. Could only run.
It's more or less vague on how the details of the pawns get into place for the player's arrival, but I found the setup really interesting, and it's all the more disappointing that we don't get to interact with the family drama more. The third piece to this family drama puzzle is the Nightsong herself. When the party enters the Grand Mausoleum, Shadowheart immediately claims something is calling her deeper and deeper into the structure. Eventually, she leads the party to the verge of shadows. It gets pretty heavy for old Shadowheart here.
I need to pray.
Whatever happens in here will define Shadowheart, setting up what her journey was, is, and will be. After defeating Alex Jones, Grimace, and all of his skeletal lackeys,
I'm animated. I'm alive. My heart's big. It's got hot blood going through it fast.
Shadowheart comes face to face with the Night Song. It's here that she makes one of the most important choices for her entire journey. If she kills the Night Song and becomes Shar's ultimate weapon, she'll be front and center for the prey she's been told she needs all her life. Or, with the help of the player, she can say to hell with all this, I'm going to take that terrifying leap. Srein is the positive encouragement she needs, pushing Shadowheart to make her own choices for the first time in a long time, sparing the Night Song and giving Aelin the power to fight back.
Mother of the so-called Night Song, the Night Song is no more!
Power isn't the only thing Night Song brings to the table. She knows about Shadowheart's past, the one thing the Lost Girl doesn't have any control of, but now she can finally take control back. Shadowheart might have freed this captive goddess, but she also freed herself from Shar's controlling grasp, with Aelin offering her all the answers she can provide in time. The coolest thing about Shadowheart is how her story can go in so many different directions. While she might be this cold and distant and honestly bitchy party member at first, she's never not a good person. Even if she wants to fulfill what she thinks is her birth-given duty, she's constantly in doubt because she quite obviously doesn't have all the pieces. The affinity system in the game where characters in your party will approve or disapprove of the things the player character does, leading to more character interactions depending on how much a party member likes the player character, is very telling of this. Shadowheart has a great sense of right and wrong, even if it's not always outwardly facing or even inwardly facing. After saving the Emerald Grove, she makes a comment about,
You know who I never thought I'd find myself caring for? Desperate people. Like those refugees. Never gave them much thought. Certainly not that bunch in the Grove. Yet we came through for them. We saved their lives.
and when you save animals, she eats that shit up without fail. When she observes the player doing the right thing for the right reason, she always approves. But this conflicts with her teachings outright. Sharans have this ancient philosophy. The more emo it is, the better it is. One of the highest ranks in the faith are Dark Justiciars, individuals who are willing to sell their souls to be an emotionless tool for Lady Shar, her personal hunters that live in the shadows and are feared for their cunning and skill. Shadowheart only believes this is her destiny because it's what she was taught to believe at a young age. At camp, after the battle with Cleric, Nightsong, now known as Aelin, unblocks Shadowheart's memories and allows her to see what happened so many years ago. The vision we've come to know of Shadowheart's crippling fear of wolves turns out to be a forgery. The creature being surrounded by Sharans was a man, Shadowheart's father to be exact, which completely throws the memory on its head. Now we see the Sharan warriors for what they truly are. Instead of righteous fighters saving a young girl from a wild animal, they're kidnappers, separating a family to bolster their own twisted ranks. Shadowheart is thrown for a complete loop, as you can imagine, but she's now more determined than ever to find the answer to what happened on that night. All these answers and more will come to light once we're in Baldur's Gate. Before we enter the city though, Shadowheart shows us how much she's really committed to this new resolve, with a more chipper attitude and a different hairstyle to really tie it all together.
Feel like you love it.
Well, I'm glad someone does. Perhaps I'll get used to it. I have a lot to get used to right now.
I only told her that because it's what she wanted to hear. I like the black hair better.
No.
She's ready to discover the truth of her life and become her own person. With the evil bitches though, Shadowheart takes a different route. When Shadowheart fulfills her duty to Shar, she is rewarded with a new weapon and official Dark Justiciar armor. Now with power gifted from her to Lady Shar, she tells Shadowheart to eliminate the traitor Cleric.
I swear to fucking God, I will stop being so polite. Get the out of my sight before I demolish you.
After this display of faith, Lady Shar tasks her with clearing out the main Sharan base in Baldur's Gate. The Dark Lady sees it as corrupted now, and Shadowheart, as the Lady's greatest weapon, must exterminate this treachery. The death of Nightsong not only strips Cleric of his immortality, but it also causes the barrier hanging over the Last Light Inn to falter, allowing the Shadow Curse to take the safe haven and corrupt everyone within the Shadowlands' last sanctuary. The last option here, and personally my least favorite, is denying Shadowheart the chance to kill or spare the Nightsong.
I had a choice to make, in the heart of Lady Shar's domain. But you denied me that chance. There is no we. Not anymore. You would be wise to forget me. I can only hope I one day forget you.
Shadowheart's personal quests directly tie into the game's main events here in Act 2, making her, without a doubt, the most important character in Act 2. She goes through a lot, but it's one of the most gratifying to get through, with huge implications for the story moving forward. And I can't think of a better place to roll over and see what our other party members experienced in Act 2. First, I guess I'll cover Gale. Right, at the start of Act 2, we meet an old wizard named Elminster who claims he's an old buddy of Gale's. Elminster says he was sent by a certain someone, which obviously agitates Gale. But shortly after, Elminster gets on everyone's last nerve because he bloats things even more than Gale does. Holy shit.
Why, some bread, cheese, and a cup of wine would appear unto me a feast. Surely you won't begrudge me a mite of rest and repast before I get out with it.
All right, I get it!
Are all wizards in this world just like the f***ing coworker who doesn't know when to shut up, but you can't say that to their face, so you just let it go in one ear and out the other?
Could not only control the weave, but compose it. Much like a musician or a poet.
The old man finally lays it out on the table. Mystra, in her great kindness, decides to forgive Gale for his past actions and gives him the option to detonate his magic bomb nuke himself instead of constantly eating our good gear to hold it off. Now, this can lead to a unique ending where Gale will nuke the big three in the Mind Flayer colony if he's in your party. But since Nick's character Tanyth is already our spell slinger, Gale stays at the camp and is no longer gobbling up our rare items. It's a win-win, but god, he is so annoying. So, to bounce off my coworker analogy, throughout the first playthrough, Nick and I split the duty of talking to the characters that weren't in our main party when they had something to talk about at camp. He was in charge of Will, which meant Gale fell into my lap. I tried to just be the nice guy, but as if he was a puppy who latched onto the first organism who showed him any kind of attention, Srein found himself on a date with Gale.
Look at you two. Crossing wrists.
Yeah, this is really gay.
Of lovers.
Look at your little queer.
I thought this place might bring me peace.
I don't want to be that mean, but...
Good night indeed. The fairest I can imagine.
Hey, you just walk off like a f***ing
I
boss.
just spit on myself. Holy f***. I didn't know that this is what I had gotten myself into. I didn't want to be mean, but I don't think it could have been helped. After he got done being dumped by Srein, Tanyth attempts to console the poor baby outside of Baldur's Gate. This is where we learn that Gale noticed the crown that was controlling the Elder Brain was fueled by Netherese magic. He aims to research this ancient magic at Baldur's Gate's equivalent of a big-ass Barnes & Noble, the Sorcerer's Sundries. For our next coworker party member, we have Will. Surprise, surprise! He doesn't bring anything interesting to the table throughout the entire act. The big reveal when only looking at Will is seeing and confirming that the big three have captured his dad, the Duke of Ravengard, turning him into a puppet to serve the Absolute. Spooky stuff, I know. Back at camp, he's rightfully upset that his father's been kidnapped and understands how badly this could go for the group, which we will see more of in Act 3, but Will's backstory is revealed in a big way thanks to little Miss Mizora making a return.
Playtime's over, pet. Oh, I love this time of year. The dickheads start popping up wherever you look.
What do you want, Mizora?
She shows up not as herself, but as a projection, tasking Will and, by extension, the rest of the party to find something special that's down in the Mind Flayer colony. But it would seem as if she got a little impatient because when we make our way down to the colony, we find the devil trapped in a pod, similar to the one Shadowheart was in on the Nautiloid. The player has the option to save her, or the player can outright kill her. We actually tried that at first, thinking it would get Will out of his pack, but it actually kills them both. Well, it's not so great because Srein and Tanyth are good guys, so we reload. The boys make fun of Mizora a bit first and eventually release her, but in return, she does grant Will more permission to talk about their little pact. Turns out he encountered Mizora when he was 17. The young hero bit off more than he could chew one night with a dragon cult.
As the maelstrom howls, Mizora's lips press to your ear. She will destroy Baldur's Gate. Grant me your soul and I will give you the power to save it, she whispers.
Nick tries to be nice and tell him that he was super brave for all of his actions, but Will, just like Gale, rambles on and on and on and on and on.
Brother, this guy stinks!
It's very telling that Will has daddy issues after the Mizora incident, with his father obviously being very against his son making a deal with the devil.
After, he said only one word. Go.
So I did.
So, Will did just that. He left without thinking he would return. For as annoying as Will can be, you can't help but feel bad for the guy. He was just trying to be like his dad, the shining example of Baldur's Gate. Will simply wanted to protect the city that he loved so much, and it cost him a lot, but at that age, he thought that's just the kind of sacrifices heroes have to make, only to break this to his father and not have the Duke see it that way and banish the young boy. Will has lived with this guilt since then, and in all seriousness, it's pretty heartbreaking. Now we'll jump focus to everyone's favorite twink. Outside the Grand Mausoleum, the goody two-shoes run into Raphael, who starts going on and on about some boring creature in the mausoleum, but right before they're ready to blow him off, Astarion jumps into the conversation.
This is serious business, devil. Well, a long time ago, someone carved some runes into my back. I'd rather like to know what they say.
So if the group helps Raphael with the aforementioned creature, in turn, he'll decipher what's on Astarion's back. To touch on Raphael's little side quest, we head to the west wing of the mausoleum underground to find Yrgir, the creature Raphael was freaking out about. This devil has a contract with Raphael, and we see how it screwed him over. He is bound to this underground chasm until every Sharn warrior has been eliminated. Srein uses his intelligence to dig a bit deeper and even the odds a bit. The contract says anyone that hears this droning song must die, and technically that means all of Yrgir's minions have heard this song, right? And doesn't this also include your majestic displacer beast over there too?
That's sad.
Poor Yrgir. We aren't done with you quite yet, my friend. After the group puts the devil down to satisfy Raphael's conditions, he's ready to share what is owed. Astarion's master Cazador has carved out a part of an infernal contract between himself and the archdevil Mephistopheles upon his back. This contract instructs Cazador on how to do something vile, even by devil standards: the Rite of Ascension. If he completes this rite, he'll become a vampire ascendant, aka a vampire who is so strong that not even the sun can stop him. This rite requires Cazador to sacrifice all of his vampire spawn to achieve it, with the only missing ingredient being our favorite twink over there. Astarion being captured by the Mind Flayers has stopped Cazador's plans for ascension completely, but Twink is a cunning little vampire spawn. He says that he has a plan, but he'll need the group's help. But that's all we hear of this until Act 3. Before we continue with the main party, I do want to touch on Yrgir again. So this demon has Raphael in a tizzy like we saw. In the first playthrough, we took him down to get Astarion the information he needed, but the evil bitches weren't interested in this information. The girls have enjoyed f***ing with mostly whoever they damn well please, and this list includes Raphael, so instead, they went to Yrgir and bargained to help free him. The big guy tasked them with finding the last of the Sharn so he can finally fulfill his contract. In the first playthrough, Srein was able to speak with animals, we know this. And in the temple, there are rats all over the place.
Oh, shit! A rat!
After trying to start a normal conversation, they attack the party and even infect poor Shadowheart. Thus, the rat dies. But then another one showed up.
Blood spiller! Unworthy wretch! Attack one, and you make foes of all!
Okay, back with the girls now, we know something isn't right with these things. When Rose throws one of the feral rodents, another one spawns out of nowhere, eventually leading down to a grotto in the temple where hundreds of these rats just come out of the woodworks. Thankfully, Shadowheart has a spell that was just made for this kind of situation. But after they're all dead, the final rat transforms into a Dark Justiciar.
You! Why did you have to keep prying? Why couldn't you just leave?
Turns out, this was the last Dark Justiciar, and after delivering sweet justice, the girls return to Yrgir. Raphael then shows up calling him a wimp because he couldn't overcome his loophole, saying that it was a breach of contract to give the girls the last kill. But he then gaslights Yrgir into agreeing to a new contract.
I feel bad for that guy.
This whole side quest just further reinforces the running theme, you can't trust a devil. Last but not least, we have Mommy Karlach. Through this blacksmith at the last light inn, the group finds out that they can supply Karlach's engine with upgrades if they can get their hands on a material called infernal iron. This helps to cool her off a bit, but it's still very much a temporary solution to a very permanent problem. Karlach also reveals that she has a huge problem with Gortash after seeing him in the Mind Flayer colony. The mere sight of him triggers her flames. At camp after this interaction, we learn that Gortash was the one that sold Karlach to Zariel over a decade ago. She trusted him with her life and he threw her away like trash. Now, her mission is clear. She's going to kill Gortash and make him pay for everything he's done to her. And of Of course, putting a stop to his plans for Baldur's Gate is a plus. Outside of this, however, Karlach doesn't have much going on in the second act. It really sucks to see that Golden Retriever's sweet energy abused so often. With Zariel, as we learned previously, and now we know that she was mistreated by Gortash before that. Oh, I'm so glad she has Nick now, though. They make such a great duo. But in all honesty, she's just happy we're doing the right thing, and she's always doing something to make us chuckle.
Okay, she threw the spear.
Karlach. Also, a quick mention, Lae'zel is still here, but the good guys forgot to do the creche in Act 1. The evil bitches did it in the second playthrough, but Lae'zel herself was a little tied up and wasn't able to join them.
God damn.
That's just about all the characters that we had any sort of meaningful interactions with in Act 2, but we still have a few smaller scenarios to cover before we get to the grand finale. When we arrived in the Last Light Inn, Nick and I started exploring separately like we do. I saw some oxen in the stables, and of course, Srein can speak with animals, so I went over to talk to them. The first was pretty typical, just a regular old cow, but then something was off about the second one.
Well, come close. Your mind to mine.
What in the What?
What the is going on?
I pissed off the bull. Oh. It turned into some kind of jelly monster.
Ross, I leave you alone for 5 seconds.
Look,
you discovered Satan's personal bull.
I don't even know what to say.
The road to Moonrise Towers has several things to get distracted by, and they're all pretty interesting. Pretty soon after departing, you can...
No! I scared you! I saw it! Nobody beats me at hide and seek.
So, this ghost child named Oliver has been out in the shadows all alone. Something is obviously affecting this Oliver, but no one is sure what it is. He asks if the party will play hide and seek with him, and if the party says no, his mummy and daddy will be very angry. The party cautiously obliges the spectral boy. Tanyth finds him once, but in order to even the score, he asks to play a second time, only this time his family will be helping him out on the seeking side. It can turn into a combat encounter if the party is found, but nothing much else comes from it. I'm sure there is more to this quest, but unfortunately we didn't find whatever else it was. The Waning Moon is another stop the player is likely to take in the Shadowlands, and within it they'll find Thistlebald Thorm. This giant is filled to bursting and tends the bar. He seems to have little by way of intelligence, but he does drop a few interesting tidbits. He refers to Ketheric as father. Now, it's unclear if he means this in the sense that you would think, because it's never mentioned that they're of any blood relation. Ketheric never mentions Thistlebald, and neither does Isabel, so it seems more likely to me that this big guy was resurrected by Balthazar and merely worships Ketheric as some sort of god. Eventually, you will have to fight the undead oaf as he's sworn himself to protect Ketheric's secrets. But it is an interesting tidbit I find. Shortly after, the party finds themselves at the so-called House of Healing. Inside, the sisters are observing as Malice Thorm is about to perform some sick and twisted operation on this poor sap.
Absence. No other word captures the heart of Shah so very perfectly.
Shadowheart,
it is the scalpel-led journey that leads from pain to
Oh my god.
What the fuck is this loon talking about?
He then asks if the party would like to be cured, and after both times of us going through this encounter, it's ended with them all dying without us even lifting a finger. This might be one of the easiest encounters to talk your way out of in the game. Tanyth proposes that the sisters are not ready for the test of curing a person and that they should instead practice on each other, which then sees them all viciously killing each other. Malice then volunteers to cure Tanyth, but instead, the Twink Elf says that it would be even more beneficial if he shows a wizard such as himself the benefits of being in the embrace of Shar's darkness.
Oh, well then I have nothing funny to say.
Even more so than Thistlebald, Malice has no discernible connection to the Thorm family. He makes no meaningful connections to Ketheric and seems to be solely focused on his own medical teachings. That's a cap on Act 2, and I think as we get ready to go into the final act of our story, we should do things a little differently. I think that we should go for the side stories and the character stuff and the shenanigans we get into before we tackle the Mother Brain and the Illithid invasion. So let's wrap it up by going into the grimy underbelly of Baldur's Gate. The carnival has come to the great city. After passing a morality check courtesy of this guy and his zombie friend, the player is free to roam the fairgrounds and participate in all of the attractions. There are several points of interest for the player to see as they make their way through this little strange slice of Baldurian entertainment. As Tanyth and Srein first enter the grounds, they come across a genie spinning a wheel to reward prizes to anyone who lands a jackpot. The boys don't have any luck with this, unfortunately, only gaining a hole in their pockets with Tanyth getting bold and accusing the genie of cheating. The being doesn't take kindly to this, however, turning our beautiful half-elf sorcerer into a block of cheese.
Holy shit.
I'm a cheese wheel.
The evil bitches, however, saw through this scammer's tricks. Rose steals his ring, which was the source of the wheel's deception. However, this gets poor Nikki sent to a whole-ass new dimension with roaming dinosaurs. Thankfully, she makes it back and is able to move across the walkway to a matchmaker. Zathino here is in the business of love, allowing party members to test their bonds and strengthen their love. Rose and Shadowheart's relationship is as strong as ever, with the two understanding each other's boundaries and darkest secrets. But Srein doesn't have the same amount of luck with God's favorite princess.
But you're right. I suppose I should be grateful. You helped me shed any illusions that you might have been paying attention. Thank you.
Oh.
Damn.
Poor guy simply has no game.
Me too, buddy.
Turns out that this was all a sham anyway, for there is no Zathino. This was all Orin in disguise. She really doesn't say anything here except that she's horny for murder and she has her eye on you. That's something the player will see plenty of in Act 3. There are often times where Orin will show up out of nowhere and show that she not only has been watching you, but she's one step ahead of the party at almost every turn. And the last real attraction of the carnival is the master of punchlines, Dribbles the Clown. A famous entertainer in the city with a great stage presence and even better audience engagement than a Twitch streamer.
Does anyone know why?
But something isn't quite right with Dribbles. For one of his jokes, he sicks his dog on Karlach, ripping her throat out and viciously killing her, and I just don't get it. No, but what's really happening here is the once great Dribbles the Clown has been murdered and replaced with a shapeshifter, something that, again, will be a recurring thing in the city. After speaking with Lucretius, aka Bob the Drag Queen, aka Ringmaster of the Operation, aka Mother Superior of They Them Cooch, Dribbles has been killed and they need his corpse back at any cost. So immediately the heroes offer to look for the deceased comedian.
That's the spirit, darling. And remember, I look after those who make me happy.
Oh.
Good luck.
Okay.
Thanks ever so much.
Shut up, Ross. This is the second time you've had they them pussy offered on a silver platter and you refused it.
Are you talking about Gale?
The party scours the city, discovering literal bits and pieces of Dribbles, with the main party unfortunately not finding the whole clown before the end of the game. But our favorite ladies had time to spare, and by that I mean they had a walkthrough from the internet. But hooray! Dribbles' 2 arms, 2 legs, head, and torso are returned to Lucretius. She thanks you kindly, and that's that. After having their fill with the festivities, the group finds a dog kennel. The kennel master and her helper recognize our favorite pup, Scratch, saying that they're happy to have him back home. This is apparently where his original master, you know, was from. Srein whistles for the best boy to come over, but we can immediately tell that the happy wagging tail we've come to know has stopped. Scratch is obviously scared. The woman attempts to raise her hand to Scratch, and in both playthroughs I shut that shit the f down. Both Srein and Rose threaten the woman's life if she ever attempts to harm the animals here again, with her running away in fear. Both protagonists free the captive dogs afterwards as well. If you saw the Final Fantasy XVI video, this shouldn't be a surprise. I'm a dog person. Dog abuse or animal abuse in general is punishable by death to me. End of story. Next quest.
I am Commander Lightfeather, leader of the finest aerial communication regiment this side of the Triumpha.
Since we're on the subject of animals, there's this kind of boring quest you can find where you have to help this small letter shop find some missing letters. And thanks to a quick speak with animals spell, we find out that they're currently at war.
Damned awful business. Fine flyers, a lot of them. Gone without a trace.
That's all. I just chuckled at that.
You made a mockery of me, you little
Ding dong, the witch is indeed not dead. Tanyth bumped into a woman looking for her missing daughter, and while investigating, we find out that everyone's favorite hag was the one who took her. After the incident with Mayrina, she came to the city looking for a new child to put under her hag wings. She's unfortunately already succeeded at this, with poor Vanra already inside her stomach. Srein and Tanyth deal with her mind-controlled cronies once again, but she can't be truly hurt without the risk of harming the girl inside. So instead, they knock her out and slice open her stomach to rescue the girl. Before Auntie Ethel comes to, Tanyth puts her down for good. But just a few houses over, the group runs into Mayrina as calm and collected as ever. After the incident in Ethel's swamp, she came to the city in search of those who had also been captured by the witch, with this bunch of losers being the honorary support group for people who have escaped from Auntie Ethel. But speaking plainly, I still agree with my past self when I say,
should have known if anyone was gonna save the day, it'd be you.
You. Yeah, nah, Mayrina still sucks as far as I'm concerned. The last thing this brat said to us was that she hates us for saving her, and I kinda understood it because she wanted her husband back even though she was sacrificing her baby for it. But no, you're gonna come back into the picture and immediately say that you've always appreciated me? F off. You should have shown it the first time with your Fiona-ass dress.
Well, you have my gratitude regardless. Thanks. From me and the little one.
Try not to give that one away too, because I'm not saving you again. A nearby church has been recently shaken by the murder of their priest. It's not just the priest either, 2 others at the church have been killed in the same way, with more and more identical murders cropping up all over the city as the party explores. Ooh, a murder mystery is afoot.
I think we should split up. What are we looking for? Clues!
But it's not solved here. The group meets with the city's detective, Valeria the Flying Magical Elephant. Tanyth provides the evidence that these murders are much bigger than just random killings. Valeria, being the charming fellow he is, gives them a pass to the lower city, basically saying, do my job for me, ha ha ha, I'm an alcoholic. And now it's up to our heroes to get to the bottom of this.
What are you waiting for? You've a bloody conspiracy to solve. Move!
Now in the lower city, all the murder targets can be found, and with a little luck, stopped from becoming murder victims. Now, I'm not going to cover every potential victim because spoilers, and also because some are already dead. And some victims spring off into other quest lines entirely due to the entangled web that is Act 3. So I thought it'd be best to tackle all that we can here. First, we have Chef Rovier. The party tells him he's on the wanted list, but he won't even consider our warning unless we take care of his rat problem in the basement? That's kinda stupid on his part to not take a death threat seriously, but okay. Begrudgingly, they head downstairs and take care of the chef's little problem, but before they go back up, the Emperor reveals that his secret lair is further inside this system. The boys entertain him and start making their way deeper into this place to not only find the old hideout, but a patrol of Githyanki still hoping to get the prism. They seriously need to let that go. After sneaking out of a trap door to the sewers, a bloodied Lae'zel surprises us by scrambling around the corner.
Orin happened. She seized me from our camp, bore me here to Baal's enclave.
The party is a little confused by all this, and yep, you guessed it, this isn't Lae'zel, it's actually Orin, claiming she has kidnapped Lae'zel, offering an ultimatum to the party: kill Gortash and bring her his netherstone or Lae'zel dies. Orin is gone before any more questions can be asked, leaving the group to head back up and tell Rovier.
Thank you, Chef.
Shut the f*** up! Shut the f*** up! Let me think for a f***ing second.
Next on the shit list is Cora Highberry, who they stumble upon at a wine tasting party. All seems to be well until we notice a suspicious dude hanging over her shoulder. Getting a closer look, we notice that this dwarf is wearing scarlet red armor, the exact same description that every eyewitness has been giving the murderer.
Good work, gang!
This is our serial killer staring us right in the face, and Srein wastes no time jumping in and trying to stop him from taking his next victim. Unfortunately, he escapes, but our hero did manage to save the old woman. Cora is safe, but now on high alert. It's also worth mentioning that around some of these targets there are actual shapeshifters waiting for the command to help murder these victims if need be. The man means business. And our last victim is a man named Figaro, the proud owner of Facemaker Boutique. Once Srein arrives, we notice that things have gotten way out of hand. Dolor, the murderer, is already in the act, with Figaro paralyzed in his chair along with some city guard. Our serial killer is ready to execute Figaro, but Tanyth jumps in just in the nick of time. The party protected the man not only because it's the right thing to do, but also because Figaro be selling that drip. Dolor had nowhere to run this time, leading to the party finally dealing with him for good. After digging into his cold pockets, we discovered that this is indeed linked to the Lord of Death, Baal. But it goes deeper than we had thought, literally. This note tells of a secret entrance to an underground Baal sanctuary and a password to gain entrance. It also had a bag of severed hands. Ew. After making their way to this sanctuary, they're met with these metal as shit dark knights guarding the door.
Present me well from gifts thine own, or I shall rend thy flesh from bone.
Sitting upon his throne, we encounter Sarevok and his bloody phantom cheerleaders. He then begins to beckon us to join Baal's deadly assassins and prove ourselves to the unholy deity. He also shares that Orin is his granddaughter. Sarevok takes much pride in how much of a twisted murderer she's grown into, becoming the perfect vessel for Baal. The love a grandparent has for their grandkid. It's so beautiful. He nearly brought Baldur's Gate to its knees until he was stopped by Jaheira and the party about 100 years ago. Again, this ties back to the original Baldur's Gate. Sarevok was apparently the final boss of the original game, the things you learn. But Tanyth says screw that noise, and together the party send him back to the Hells. But before leaving, the party notice a peculiar door, and guess who we find behind said door, trapped and begging for help? Why, our magic alcoholic elephant friend. This is the biggest I told you so moment in the game because he didn't believe or didn't even really seem to care about any of this nonsense, as he put it. But he went and got kidnapped and can be a potential rite of passage sacrifice if the player joins the cult of Baal. It might not be Srein and Tanyth's cup of tea, but this is the type of shit the evil bitches live for. Oh, this.
Citizen, stop this at once!
Behold, Father, baptized in your most wretched name, a new, unholy assassin.
Now that they have this Baal amulet and no Orin must be stopped, the party heads deep into the sewers to find her. But before that, we need to address the other tyrant in the room, Enver Gortash.
That's not much of a ruler's name though, is it right? Enver sounds like the name of a kid whose SpaghettiOs just got finished with their 3 minutes in the microwave and now he's gonna go put them in a bowl and sit down to watch Johnny test.
In Act 3, the player comes to, arguably, the most impactful moment on how events will unfold for the immediate future. The choice is presented to either side, with either Orin or Gortash conspiring with the player to take the other one out. Of course, this being Baldur's Gate 3, you could also just kill both of them without making an alliance, but since I laid the groundwork on how to get Orin, I figured I'd lay some for Gortash as well. When first approaching the Upper City Gate, the party will have their first run-in with these Gundam-ass units called the Steel Watch. These are Gortash's perfect soldiers, a task force that has no will of its own and can keep the city under his control through, let's be honest, mostly fear. I mean, come on, he just looks like bad news. It's like trying to tell me Master Xehanort is actually a good guy or something. That would just be stupid. To the citizens and the city officials, he looks like a stand-up guy. But Srein, Tanyth and company know that he must have ulterior motives. After entering Worm's Rock, the group is approached by a Steel Watch with Gortash speaking through it, personally inviting the crew to his coronation as the new Grand Duke. Now, I wonder why Will's dad would let that happen. Now, of course, we have the option to try and end Gortash here and now, but it would be impossible for a few reasons. 1, our level isn't as high as it could be. 2, the Steel Watch would split them open for touching Sticky Enver. And 3, the whole city would be after them if they killed their second coming of Christ. Tanyth then comes up with a fourth option: beat Gortash at his own game, promising the eyeshadow-wearing ruler that they'll hunt down Orin and take her Netherstone if he calls off his army so they can roam the city in peace. Gortash accepts, and it's smooth sailing until the cunning side of our half-elf shows itself. The plan is to double-cross him. The same thing both Orin and Ketheric planned on doing to him, but the only difference here is, well, we'll actually succeed. So now, with both options laid out before us, let's see how these paths unfold. We'll start with Gortash first. You essentially hit the same beats to find your way into the sewer. Solve the murder mystery, check. Kill Sarevok and get the Amulet of Baal, check. Orin says, boo, I have some hostage, come kill me. Check. Now it's time to scour the underbelly of the city for a mistress who's horny for murder. The party finds a creepy looking door with a suspicious corpse hanging above a ritual circle. Srein deduces that blood is the answer, shooting the hanging corpse with it opening the creepy ball door for us. After several grueling trials, a red mist hangs in the air over this ball sanctuary. The boys press the amulet against it and it swings open to show Orin at the ritual site with Lae'zel. Ball's Chosen isn't too happy about us showing up with no netherstone in hand, leading to the only logical course of action to ensue. Oh my god! With Orin in the rear view, our heroes make their way back to Gortash with netherstones in hand. There is an attempt to talk strictly business, but this greasy worm takes the opportunity to poke at Karlach. We'll circle back around to that can of worms in just a bit, but Gortash then stretches this alliance even thinner by asking for the netherstones flat out. Luckily, Tanyth reads his mind, seeing that this is all just a bluff. Gortash needs a strong daddy and or mommy to be his partner in crime, and with Tanyth, he's sure he's found that. After he spouts his holier-than-thou BS, everyone gathers below the city to confront the Mother Brain. But we're not quite ready to tackle that just yet, so let's jump over and check on our favorite ladies. Now, the evil bitches, of course, went the other route to see how things would unfold. But sadly, things more or less stay the same, only flowing in a different order. Orin still kidnapped someone, but since we only had 2 party members, Orin just kidnaps this kid that makes her way to camp in Act 3 regardless. However, before we head towards Orin, we take care of Gortash in a silly way so that we can get an achievement.
Why is he not moving?
Don't know.
Okay, that's it.
Oh, because he didn't see me or you, I guess.
Oh, he didn't know what to do.
Yeah, so he just
defeat Gortash and Worms Rock without activating any traps. Yeah.
I can't wait to talk about combat. You might be asking where Gortash's personal Mega Zordons are in that encounter. Well, the evil bitches went to the Steelwash factory in the lower city and blew that place to hell. There is an option to help out the slave workers there and save their families that Gortash has held hostage, but our bitches? I mean, it's in the name. They didn't care.
Even if we beg, even if we humiliate ourselves, it won't matter. You'll kill us all anyway.
She sure will.
With his netherstone in hand now, the party once again goes down to the Ball Temple to find Orin, talk some shit, kill Orin, and save the child. Now, with all the netherstones in hand, both parties are primed and ready to make their way to the Mother Brain. And this is honestly where our biggest gripe shows itself again. Baldur's Gate 3's biggest strength is the unfathomable amount of choice players are given to tackle anything and everything in the game. We've highlighted some of the weird and unexpected things we stumbled across story-wise, and those wild, unexpected twists are the rule. But it's because these moments are so common that they're expected, and it makes it that much more obvious when the exceptions to the rule appear. I've explained my Ketheric Thorm supremacy to you already, so it shouldn't even surprise you when I say Gortash and Orin are so boring when compared to Ketheric. There really isn't an evil option when it comes to them. It feels like Act 1 and most of Act 2 had given more freedom to the player's choices, while constantly presenting interesting ways to tackle the same situations. But when it comes to Act 3, Gortash and Orin specifically feel super limited. The only true difference is which one do you kill first. And with Srein and Tanyth, we had an interesting moment where we thought Gortash was going to help us fight the Mother Brain. We had the netherstones and he was right there with us, but
the next order to be given is mine, and it is this. Die.
Oh.
Hells. Talk about wiping the smirk off his
Shadowheart, baby, now's not the time.
Yeah, he just kinda died anticlimactically. Sort of a trend with these big bad characters, huh? This was really disappointing for us. While we didn't love Gortash, he didn't even come close to reaching the same highs as Ketheric, he inarguably deserved more than... He was the most sinister and cunning of the big three, the strategist, the guy who always had a plan B, and yeah, the Mother Brain is powerful, it just felt like a bit of a waste to not get something more from the game's main source of antagonization. And with Orin, what can I say? She's the most Saturday morning cartoon villain out of all of them. Her personality traits include enjoying murder and... yeah, that's it. She's the horny for mayhem character that makes internet dwellers say, I can fix her.
Oh, but I had such plans for this one. And the blade was made to slice.
Your breath smell like boiled shit.
But yeah, I have no real connection with the big three. Ketheric is the only one that had promise, but even that was squandered. With the lukewarm characters out of the way though, it's time to talk about the part of the story that everyone actually cares about, our companions and what the walls of Baldur's Gate has to offer each of them.
Of course! What fun! I'm going to kill you.
We'll start with everyone's favorite princess, Shadowheart. It's safe to say that her character arc's climax was in Act 2 with the whole Night Song shebang, with Act 3 being her falling action / resolution, you could argue. In the lower city, the evil bitches make their way to the House of Grief. Fun fact, Srein and company were on the right path, but we just didn't know what we were doing and missed it completely. First playthrough probs. But anyway, once the evil bitches arrive, they find themselves in another Sharan temple, with the cult being led by the Night Mother Superior. This is the woman who's been grooming Shadowheart from the beginning and sent her on the task to retrieve the Astral Prism. This is also the same woman that Lady Shar told Shadowheart to eliminate because of her intentions to take over the Sharan religion for her own gain. Since Shadowheart killed the Night Song and has proof that Lady Shar loves her, love being a bit of a strong word there, she can convince a lot of these cultists to betray the Night Mother and fight alongside the group in the name of the true Lady Shar. The girls defeat the evil purple bitch lady and go deeper into the temple to find two prisoners who seem to recognize Shadowheart.
I remember them. Parents. What have you done to them?
Due to Shadowheart's memory wipe, she's been torturing her own parents for years, unknowingly drawing her dark powers from their life force. It has been decades of round-the-clock torture for these people, but they never lost faith that their sweet girl would make it back to them.
Kill them. For me. Then I will take the memories away from you again. Loss will heal you, and you will be my right hand at last.
This ultimatum will either rocket Shadowheart to the end of her path with the Dark Lady, creating Shar's ultimate soldier without feeling, or you can be like Rose and convince Shadowheart to finally say enough is enough, choosing to live her own life and save her parents. The lesbian monk simp persuades Shadowheart to release her parents and reclaim her life, embracing Genevieve.
No! You've already brought me to what I need. My family. My real family.
Don't anger her, Jen. Just get out. Save yourself.
I am saving myself.
Lady Shar is not happy about this though, so in one last petty move, she steals a majority of Shadowheart's memories and dips, promising that the embrace of the night is no longer her home. One slight problem though, remember all those guys that just helped everyone take out the old purple bitch? Yeah, they don't know who the f these elves are and remain loyal to Shar.
Oh frick.
Later that evening at camp, Shadowheart reflects on the shame she feels after everything she's done over the years. The immeasurable guilt she holds on to because of the things that Shar has made her do.
That's not true.
Not even close.
I'm sorry.
Aww.
You shouldn't have to see me like this. I can't be your Genevieve. Not as you remember her.
Of course you can.
No. I'd be turning my back on too much. Shadowheart is as much part of who I am as Genevieve. Besides, Shadowheart still suits me. Even better than before, perhaps. You can't cast a shadow without some light.
Who put these onions here?
You're so bitch made.
Shadowheart's story isn't anything groundbreaking. It's one of self-acceptance and believing that a person can course correct even after going down the wrong path for so long. We've seen this same realization and arc several times in other dark, edgy protagonists. But I think for Shadowheart, and by proxy the entire cast of Baldur's Gate 3, getting to see so many layers of them due to the story structure hits me harder than this trope usually does. You can see the lengths that she would go to in one direction if pushed that way, and vice versa. And it's all delicately balanced to show the person underneath the path the player encourages her down. Shadowheart the Shar worshipper and Shadowheart the Selûnite both still love animals. They're both great at interjecting with hilarious one-liners at the worst possible times. All this stuff, no matter the path she walks, is unmistakably Shadowheart. And seeing her come back from the very edge of salvation and pushing back on the faith she was abducted by is my favorite of Shadowheart's journeys. It shows so much strength, and I love it for that. We now move from everyone's favorite princess to everyone's favorite twink. Throughout our journey, Astarion is the one who plays his cards closest to his chest. In Acts 1 and 2, he doesn't give us a lot to go on, and he doesn't open up about the shadow looming over him, his vampiric master Cazador. But after entering the city where Cazador operates, it becomes increasingly difficult for Astarion to keep his baggage suitcased. When the party first arrives in the upper city, they come across a group of Gur. Gur are essentially hunters that specifically target creatures of the night, your werewolves, vampires, and what have you. They inform the group that Cazador is planning something big soon. The vampire lord has kidnapped some of their children, and these hunters are desperate to get them back, though they understand they're outclassed. Seeing Astarion walking in the daylight free from Cazador's influence gives them hope, however.
You have lived a life of violence and sin. You have stolen lives, broken families, and caused immeasurable grief. Doing this will not right those wrongs.
Yes. Yes. Revenge. I can do.
Further into the city, two of Astarion's vampire siblings turn up, giving us a window into how Cazador has really broken these people's spirits. Most importantly, they learned about his master plan.
Tell me what I need to know, or I swear you'll burn.
The Master is preparing the Black Mass. Beneath his palace, there's a defiled chapel. It was hidden there the entire time, hidden from us all.
Keep talking.
The Black Mass, it will be his triumph. He'll complete the ritual and emerge the vampire ascendant. We'll join him, his loyal servants, walking in the light as living vampires. We'll be free, brother.
It's pretty obvious that everyone in the room besides these two saps knows that this is way too good to be true. But it's also obvious that they only believe this schlock because Cazador mentally puts them in a corner, thinking that this has to be the salvation they deserve after a lifetime of torture. It's just sad. This is the big theme of Astarion's story, recognizing abuse and gathering the strength and personal willpower to overcome it. And these two are an opaque reflection of Astarion if he was complacent, or if the events of the Nautiloid never happened. He could easily be in the same boat. This is also when Astarion starts to put the pieces of this ritual together, devising a plan that could swing the odds in his favor. Now I wonder where he learned to string people along like this. A few nights later at camp, while trying to get some sleep, more of Astarion's siblings show up and try to kidnap him to take him to Cazador.
Peace, brother. We're here to take you home.
My ass cheek. Thumbnail. There's the f***ing Baldur's Gate 3 thumbnail.
Once these Nikki boys kick their shit in, they go back to bed, prepared to hit the lower city the next day. Cazador's palace is filled to bursting with vampiric thrall, doors completely sealed with ancient dark magic, werewolves, and undead servants. Fighting their way through it all, the party finds themselves in Cazador's office with a secret elevator leading to the underground sanctuary the Gur had warned of. Not even Astarion knew of this, sharing everyone's shock that this place even exists. And speaking of Astarion's shock...
You... I know you. You're the one from the tavern. You smiled and joked and got me drunk.
No. You're dead.
You called me so many sweet things. My name sounded like a lyric on your tongue.
Sebastian.
You remember me.
You were handsome. Shy. You'd never been kissed.
You taught me how. And then you destroyed me.
Oh, man. This is Astarion at his most human. He knows he's done some pretty messed up things in order to survive, but he's always chalked it up to, well, Cazador made me do it. How else was I going to see tomorrow? This typically eases his conscience with a... And Brick. Hello! So there's no reason to think about it. But now, all this is flipped on its head. Over the past 200 years or so, Astarion has helped to kidnap thousands for Cazador, and they've all been turned to thrall, rotting in a cage, suffering. Even if you make an attempt to be snarky with Astarion at this point to ease his tension, he'll shut it down this time. He also comes to another grim realization. All of these thrall, which turns out to be 7,000 people, not including him and his 6 siblings, will all be sacrificed for Cazador's gain. They will all die so Cazador can become the vampire ascendant. Beyond this last door, he will confront the Vampire Lord and hopefully put an end to this madness. Srein, Tanyth, and company find him in the middle of the ritual with all of Astarion's siblings primed and ready for sacrifice. The only piece missing is our Twink and Cazador.
Who stands before us? Is this truly our prodigal son?
Wait. This is Cazador? Like the Vampire Lord Cazador?
You truly thought our bond as creator and creation was all that stopped you from killing me?
1, 2, 3.
This guy is a total dork. This fight becomes one of the more interesting ones due to him snatching Astarion before the encounter starts, so you have to not only fight him, but you also have to rescue Twink so your party isn't gimped throughout the boss fight.
No healing sleep for you. Wake up! I'll never have to fear you again. But if I finish the ritual you started,
oh,
I'll never have to fear anyone. Ever.
Once Cazador has been dealt with, Astarion finally lets us in on his master plan.
Link your mind to mine. Through your eyes, I can see the scars on my back and copy them onto his.
Now, our good boys have absolutely no tolerance for this evil behavior, and Astarion isn't too happy about that. After killing Cazador and a brief moment of clarity, he sets his anger on his friends, telling them that they didn't support him in his endeavors, which leads to Astarion flat out leaving the party permanently.
I'm done with this. And I'm done with you.
F*** you.
Whatever.
I would say good luck out there, but honestly, I hope you die screaming.
One feature of the affinity meter I mentioned earlier is having party members more or less easily convinced by the player, or in some cases, forgive them if they do something to upset them. But since neither Tanyth or Srein spent any considerable amount of time with Astarion, he didn't give two shits about them. They were simply acquaintances at best. And due to that, he just dips. It's kind of a slap to the face, but it shows that these characters are way more than just stats or names in a party list. They're people, and just like people, some are a lot more selfish than others. However, having all this power at their side is yet again something the evil bitches are very interested in.
Yes, I see it.
What are you doing? Don't! Ah!
Now, Ascended Twink is without a doubt on his evil path, because the moment he obtains this power, he immediately goes on his, oh, the world can be mine now, I have unlimited power. And where Nikki was once a dear friend, she's now become a treasured toy. Astarion doesn't have a soul anymore. He's no longer the lovable, witty shit, he's just an empty, yet very powerful vampire, with new powers to boot.
Oh, I don't know. This might be the perfect place for them to die.
Oh yeah, the Gur are not happy about Twink getting all of this new power, threatening to hunt him down if it's the last thing they do. So the evil bitches do what they do best, and that's killing people they don't like. Astarion's story is a bit tragic when you look at it. Okay, it's really tragic. He's a slave who's been beaten into a corner, accumulating these negative traits from awful people, and it can't help but be this way because these people are all he knows. The one chance he has to break free from all this and become his own person presents itself at the beginning of the journey. But he ultimately ends up resenting the people who encouraged him to change, which in turn sees him likely resenting himself afterwards, given the solace that he obviously feels after his past deeds. Or he throws it all away for power because power is the only thing that consistently keeps him safe. He's always been at the bottom, so he only cares about being on top for self-preservation's sake. If the player does end up getting close to Astarion, he could throw all the power away and start to find himself legitimately, which is very sweet to see. But the two Astarions we have now are gone, or just the next Cazador. Someone who has become addicted to power, building his influence, and seeing everything and everyone as beneath him for the rest of his eternal life. That is, until someone comes along and does the same thing that he did to Cazador to him. Cycle of violence and all that. Last but not least in our top 3 companions is the dearest Mommy Karlach. Her personal goal throughout this adventure is to get her engine under control. While exploring the city, we really don't get one-on-one moments with Karlach like we do for the other party members. Instead, we see how much of a person she was before she was thrown under Hell's burning bus. This is shown through the reputation she has in the city. Citizens and comrades alike will all run up to Karlach and talk like she's a long-lost friend. When Karlach is in the party, certain vendors will reminisce about the fun times they've had.
I can't tell you how good it is to see you, Fitz. I'd love to come have dinner with you and Gregor. We're in the city on some urgent business, but can I come find you when it's all settled?
She's covered in
I'd
blood.
love that. Meanwhile,
Karlach is a warm ray of sunshine, and most people she encounters immediately love her off the rip. Exhibit A:
evil bastard.
I want to kill him.
All the other companions have nothing but positive things to say about her. And hell, Will even broke his contract with Mizora once he actually got to know her. Hypothetically, Karlach has one of the happiest endings once this is all said and done. The problem is her time is extremely limited. Even with the upgrades to her engine, she's very aware that her time is short. For everyone else, making it to the other side of this means returning to a pre-established or newly reinvigorated life. But for Karlach, everything could very well end, even if she does help the group succeed. And knowing that just sucks. But the thing is, this deadlock of fate wasn't something that she did to herself. It was someone else's doing.
It was this fucking guy.
If you recall, at the end of Act 2, we discovered that Mommy has quite a bone to pick with Ol Enver. 10 years ago, Karlach was something of a bodyguard for Gortash, even looking up to the man. But without a real reason, one day he just decides to sell her to Zariel, kickstarting her stint as a general in the battle between devils and demons. The boys have had plenty of opportunities to try and take him out, but just haven't. This is the thing that also makes Karlach stick out. Even though it might really piss her off, she can put her anger to the side to not physically make situations worse.
When you turned on me, I was too dumbstruck to realize what was happening. No way he'd hurt me, I thought. But I suppose evil has no real cause. It just is. Until it isn't.
But she's never afraid to let people know that once a better opportunity comes, their ass is grass.
There will come a time, sooner than you think, when death comes knocking on your door. You'll swing that door open, and you'll cower before what you see, and you'll beg, "Please, Karlach, spare me. I can't wait."
With a little reason, she can always step back and see the bigger picture. She's not nearly as selfish or full of herself as the rest of the companions. The crappy thing is, though, we don't really get to see how Karlach reacts to Gortash's death because of, you know. But Nick has actually played 2 additional playthroughs of this game. I mean, just look at that playtime, oh my god. With one of those playthroughs capturing her reaction to it. Unfortunately, he didn't have the hindsight to record the playthrough like I asked him to multiple times. But after seeing Gortash dead, Karlach still doesn't find any satisfaction. Because now, the only thing left for her to focus on is her timer, and that's still ticking down. She's enraged, maybe slightly vindicated in her head because she got her revenge, but she realizes it doesn't mean anything now because she knows she'll be right behind him soon enough. But once again, her optimism shines through. She comes to peace with her situation, taking up her weapon and using the remainder of her time to save the family she's made along this journey. So with the companions we actually care about wrapped up until the finale, I think we should check with, well, what are arguably sloppy seconds.
Here's 3 reasons why I'd be a great Valentine. Number 1, I give the best snuggles ever.
Okay, so quick rundown. Gale is super arrogant, had relations with the goddess of magic, tampered with forbidden magic, and is essentially a ticking nuke waiting to blow. After a successful magical heist that we'll touch on later in the video, Tanyth presents Gale with something he's been asking for. This book informs Gale that the crown of Karsus can indeed be reforged. Using the 3 netherstones, this artifact is capable of controlling pretty much anything the owner wills it to. This is, coincidentally, how the Dead 3 have been controlling the Mother Brain thus far. Small world, right?
Mystra knows you defied her, Gale. Of course she knows. She's Mystra.
Elminster then shows up at camp conveniently after we've talked about this crown's power, presenting Gale with Mystra's new deal, asking that Gale surrender the crown to her after the Mother Brain has been defeated, and in return, she'll free him of his status as the Sword Coast's most awkward nuclear deterrent.
Just think of it. The power of the gods in mortal hands at last would be free of doctrine and dogma, confined only by the limits of our imaginations.
Tanyth is quick to call Gale out on his bullshit though, with the narcissistic wizard realizing he's not destined to become the next coming of Jesus, agreeing to give the crown to Mystra after the battle is over. For as much as I've given Gale throughout this analysis, no one can say that he was miscast. Tim Downey, the voice of Gale, was a pitch-perfect choice, mainly because this guy is Gale.
Titus Alone, part of the Gormenghast trilogy by Mervyn Peake, written on Sark, which is a tiny little island in the Channel, just outside of Jersey, Guernsey, that kind of direction, and about the young boy, Titus Groan, and his crumbling kingdom of Gormenghast. It's just an extraordinary, unbelievable...
He is just as boring to listen to as the character he plays. Whoever is overcasting at Larian was on top of their game, because this guy radiates coworker you begrudgingly listen to talk about his weird boring hobbies because you don't want to be rude energy.
There we go, the lights on. Hi, I'm Gale, and welcome to my dating profile.
Will is still as boring as ever though. He's upset about his father being taken and brainwashed, allowing Gortash to become the Duke. Meanwhile, Mizora picks at him any chance she can get. And it is her, yet again, that makes his story remotely interesting. She comes into the camp at night with a new offer for Will, stating she'll break his contract immediately and let him use his powers until the Mother Brain problem is solved, but there is a catch. For him to be free of Mizora's pact, he'll have to sacrifice his father. And if he refuses, Mizora keeps Will as her pet. Permanently. Ultimately, the gang convinces Will to forsake his old man and become his own person. Mainly because, one, based on the information we have on Duke Ravengard via Will, the old man kinda sounds like a douche. Two, Mizora is half devil, which means you can't trust her at all. And three, it just seems like the better option all around.
Do it. Break the pact.
Again, when it comes to Will, he's really hard for me to click with, so helping him get his freedom just seems like the best thing to do. Like, it's just a baseline good thing to do in this situation. We're not really involved per se, but we can at least say he's an acquaintance. Also, another fun thing about Mizora, on the boobies. Yo, second base. He looks so confused. She a little freak. And the cherry on top is...
The one taste is all I'll give.
Why?
Will gets so pissy if you do sleep with her. It ultimately means nothing for this playthrough, but it is funny. The last companion out of our big 6 is none other than Lae'zel. Now, we kinda slept on her story due to us both having our respective mommies, but something interesting happens with her in Act 3. Queen Vlaakith, in all her glory, approaches the party at night, wanting to recruit Lae'zel to being her right hand. Even though Vlaakith hasn't done anything to assist the main party, and the main party has done virtually nothing with the Githyanki. This starts to paint an interesting picture. This ghost lady is your typical all must obey me type of queen. If you don't do as she says when she says it, you're done. The evil bitches found that out the hard way, if you remember. Let's think back to the Githyanki prince in the astral plane. Isn't it funny how Vlaakith only shows up after we know he exists? The dots sort of connect themselves at this point, don't they? Tanyth, Srein, and by extension Lae'zel come to the realization that she's a fraud and not the real queen of the Gith. The true leader is the dude trapped in the space cage. Luckily, the gang persuades Lae'zel to tell Vlaakith to kick rocks and help her see through this projection's empty promises.
I will tear your flesh from your bones and devour your skull's marrow while you beg for death.
When it comes to the 6 main companions, they almost fit into pairs if you look at it in the right light. Gale and Astarion spent their time being manipulated and abused by a higher figure with more power than them. The player observes these men exhibit many of the nasty habits that their masters have, with the solution either being that you can save them from this cycle or let them play their part in it. For Gale, the torment is more emotional, having to constantly feel like he needs to prove himself to Mystra. This is toxic relationship 101, and for poor Astarion, it's all the telltale signs of emotional, mental, and most heartbreakingly, physical abuse. Shadowheart and Lae'zel are both indoctrinated into cults that clearly walk the line of morally correct. Shadowheart was literally brainwashed, so it's a little hard to blame her, but it also makes it all the more tragic when the respect for this cult that raised her turns to horror when she learns that she was basically kidnapped. And for poor Lae'zel, she has to fight back against her entire civilization, swimming against that current and putting everything at risk to save a foreign world she's a complete stranger to. If the game was from her perspective, it would be so interesting to hear her inner monologues regarding all the differences from her world and this world. To be fair to both women though, they were completely brainwashed at the beginning of the story. Watching them realize that they're bigger than the organizations they're attached to is extremely satisfying. And lastly, Karlach and Will are both unquestionably good people who are willing to sacrifice themselves and stick their necks out for total strangers. But one way or another, they both have runs in with devils, which never means anything good. The differences are that Will made his choice with the devil, meanwhile Karlach didn't have any say-so. These themes always reflect back onto the player's story as well. The player's master or mentor or whatever is the Emperor, who, from the very beginning, is clearly using the player for their own gain. The Absolutist cult is full of people like us with tadpoles in their heads. We meet hundreds of them as we go along our journey. Yet the player is the only one who doesn't conform to it. We later find out that this is because of the Emperor, but only kinda? The Emperor is the one who's organizing all of this, I guess you could say. But Mr. Tentacles doesn't have the power on his own. He's siphoning Orpheus's power to accomplish this goal. He's like a talent agent. All he brings to the table is organizing the actually talented people. And of course, Karlach and Will aren't the only ones with a devil constantly hanging over their shoulder. Enter Raphael. Raphael is probably the most unofficial party member in Baldur's Gate 3. He's playing this game of cat and mouse with the party from the very beginning. He's always watching and even asks for a favor every now and again. He's been spending his time buttering the party up and laying the groundwork for his master plan. And in Act 3, he's ready to go all in. In the upper city, Tanyth and Srein are in the middle of putting the murder mystery together when they're led into a local brothel. While talking to the owner, we learn that Raph is here and waiting in his room. So they mosey on up there and he's always very excited to see our heroes. But the conversation he wants to have this time is delicate and requires a little more privacy.
I'm afraid the tadpole is still there. But I did shut out your other visitor for a while, so we can enjoy some privacy.
Once alone, he begins to spell out the master grand plan he's been scheming on for the past 1,000 years.
You give me the crown that dominates the Elder Brain.
Remember the crown I mentioned earlier? The crown of Karsus? Can make anything happen depending on the user's will? Yep, that's the thing he wants, and he knows that these goobers are the best chance at obtaining it. So, just as all devils do, he wants to make a deal. By this point though, Tanyth and Srein know better than to deal with devils, so they turn him down. He continues to prod, however. He has the means to free Prince Orpheus from the astral plane, an ancient relic called the Orphic Hammer.
You give the crown to me. In exchange, I give you the hammer now.
At this point in the game, we had definitely become very skeptical of the Emperor, but not enough to jump into a long-term commitment with a devil, on top of giving him that much power to use freely? He says he covets the crown to organize the hells and set things right down below, but I mean, look at this guy. Who's to say he would stop there? Our heroes ultimately decline the offer, but he assures them that there will come a time when they're backed into a corner. And when that time comes, there won't be any further negotiations. Raphael may have just given the recipe away though. Now that Tanyth and Srein know there is a way to be free from the Emperor, they plan to capitalize on this by getting that Orphic Hammer from Raphael's tight grip. While wandering around the lower city, Tanyth finds his way into a little shop called the Devil's Obelisk, and talking with the owner leads to a few surprises. Mainly, this woman has the means to open up portals to the Hells, thus giving them a way to reach Raphael's House of Hope. She gives a quick rundown on how to open the portal, and before you know it, the gang leaps through and into hell. Now in the belly of the beast, our heroes are prepared to pull off one of the greatest heists in history. Raphael's House of Hope is filled to the brim with sights to see, but the first thing everyone who enters will come across is this schizophrenic woman named Hope.
Curiosity killed all the cats. It won't be so kind to you.
As the woman speaks, you hear a distant rattle of chains, and she winces in pain.
The jailer will hear us.
This poor thing is willing to help the group get the hammer if we agree to free her, and she's easily one of the best characters in the game. Unfortunately for Hope, every second counts, so the party gets down to business.
A lost little mouse is running through the house.
Oh lord.
Oh my.
Oh gods. What the f*** have I stumbled into?
I am Harlip, Raphael's personal incubus, glamoured and transfigured to look like.
Oh, so he's a narcissist. We learn that Raphael has a personal succubus or incubus sex slave that will change between the two depending on how he's feeling that particular evening.
Excuse me, madam. Me.
But you enjoy
Some
yourself.
red hot-blooded fucking rat.
Come on. It's exactly what he wants.
It's a surprise. Off with your clothes.
There you go, see? Here you go.
A simple swap pales in comparison to what you were about to do for me.
It and raw. Oh! Ross.
Nicholas?
I already told you. It's a surprise.
Yo!
You like surprises.
You love surprises.
I don't.
You stop breathing, your heart stops beating, and your mind begins to clear entirely. Some
If I
last
come so
thought
hard that I
whispers in your
die.
skull, located by
Nah, Blood's got the sickest indoor hot tub in all the Hells. The House of Hope would easily be the winner of an MTV's Cribs episode. They have winners on that show, don't they? I've never actually seen an episode. But anywho, we're on a mission. The party finds the vault on the other end of the house, and inside it, the Orphic Hammer, prime for the taking. Thanks to Hope, we learn that the orb containing the hammer can only be unlocked by saying a certain phrase. The moment this hammer leaves the vault, there's no going back. Raphael is coming in hot, and the once ambivalent residents of the house are immediately hostile. The once calm halls are littered with orbs of hellfire and specters at every turn. Srein and Tanyth's crew fight their way through to the other side and keep their promise to Hope by freeing her before making a mad dash for the exit. As one could expect, waiting at the exit is the master of the house himself, Raphael. There really isn't anything too crazy revealed here. Raphael isn't in much of a bargaining mood after the party has plundered his entire house. It's straight down to business. The master is accompanied by his assistant lady that we didn't really spend a lot of time on, Karlach. She's also Hope's sister, but that's neither here nor there, as well as a returning Yrgir. After the party took him out at the Sharn Temple, he was sent back to the Hells and recognizes that our heroes aren't going to be an easy victory. But after the fight is won, Hope mourns her sister for a brief moment.
She was my sister. But as a wise woman once said, there's no point in crying over spilt blood.
Damn. Devils, am I right? With all that said, I think every story has been wrapped up nicely. Every story except ours. Let's remedy that, shall we? Both parties, Srein and Tanyth as well as Rose and Nikki, return to the underground Ball Temple. There they discover a path that leads to a vast underground lake where the Mother Brain resides. After a treacherous boat ride, they come face to face with the Mother Brain, revealing that all of this was part of her master plan. She was fully under the control of the Chosen Three until both parties killed Cleric. Once the old general's hold over her was severed, she merely pretended to be subservient. She bided her time until all the stones were within arm's reach, and now, with the power of the Nether Stones, the Mother Brain evolves into something far more deadly. A Nether Brain. With this transformation comes full control over all the Absolutist and any sleeper Mind Flayer agents within the city. With all of them primed, the final onslaught begins. The party attempts to wrestle control back from her one last time, but ultimately it fails.
You are delusional. The crown is how we controlled you.
Bit by.
And just before the party is about to meet the same fate, the Emperor swoops in and pulls everyone into the astral plane. This is where the Emperor and the party's relationship reaches its climax. The two choices the party have are to either let him absorb Orpheus so he can use his anti-mind control powers to protect everyone, or alternatively, use the Orphic Hammer to free Orpheus, which is a complete and total gamble at this point because no one knows if Orpheus is chill or not. Srein and Tanyth, completely over the Emperor's lies, decide to free Orpheus, with the Emperor essentially leaving in a similar fashion as someone who was just broken up with.
Very well. Since you will not work with me, you work against me.
Only a Sith deals in absolute.
You leave me no option but to join the Netherbrain.
So he's gonna go.
So you're just gonna change your mind like that?
Wow. This entire situation wraps back around on itself with such a nice ironic bow on top. Tentacle Guy has been against the idea of being a mind-controlled slave this entire time, and the first time the party says we'd rather not literally put all of our faith in the weird alien guy who constantly lies to our face and gets caught doing it, he goes back on everything he stood for and becomes the brain's puppet anyway. This just goes to show that the Emperor is a rat that will do anything to make sure he's on top and can get the biggest bang for his buck for the least amount of effort. But now it's just the gang and this wild card of a character who's been trapped for over 1,000 years. After freeing him, it's plain to see that Orpheus is just a typical Githyanki, in the sense that he's sort of a stuck-up prick, but he has enough sense to put his attitude aside and help fight against the Nether Brain. All of this does come with a catch, however. Either Orpheus or one of the party members has to become a Mind Flayer in order to have the necessary power to combat the Elder Brain, which is like a bullshit. Tanyth is already half Illithid and the benefits of it are pretty noticeable, but at no point did anyone want to become a full-blown Squidward, so we let Orpheus do it. I'm sure he doesn't mind. Now he's a little purple dude with super anti-mind flayer powers. Way to take one for the team, bro. I guess he is kinda chill after all. On the flip side though, when presented with the option of either letting the Emperor ascend or freeing Orpheus, the evil bitches came to a unique decision.
Do not seek me again. We are done. You will live with the consequences of your actions for the little time you have left.
Options. Orpheus will be of no use so long as he's tame.
We all are. At the end of everything, the final stand.
Raphael, like a cockroach waiting for a crumb to drop, crawls out of his hole, offering a way out of this mess that the girls have gotten themselves into. This instance right here made me appreciate this game on a whole other level. It's moments like this that prove Larian thought of 99.99% of every possible outcome when it comes to this game. This almost made me want to do a new playthrough just to see what happens if we kill Raphael and have no Orphic Hammer on top of pissing off the Emperor here, just to see what kind of cool thing would happen. But to see both of the quote-unquote normal endings, we reset and let the Emperor eat on Orpheus's brain.
Do not judge me.
The Illithid invasion then descends upon Baldur's Gate. The city then plunges into absolute chaos with nautiloids littering the sky, citizens defending themselves in the streets, and Githyanki flying overhead atop red dragons. It's absolute pandemonium and it doesn't look good. Srein and Tanyth make their way through the wreckage to a checkpoint only to swing the doors open and see all of the allies they've made along the way. Withers has gathered everyone here in this tower, the thoughtful old soul. After a hearty speech to rally this last line of defense, the force is in high fighting spirits. They all make for some nice callbacks to the whole adventure and the player can call upon them in the battle to come. How are the girls doing though? There is nobody in this room. Yup, that's what I figured. After an intense battle I plan on telling you all about in a bit, everyone makes it to the top and are greeted by the brain. Once it's subdued by the party, it begs for its life, but these goody two-shoes say nuts to that and put this monster down for good, helping Orpheus channel all the Netherstone's power into one huge blast. killing the Netherbrain, watching its huge prefrontal cortex ass fall into the city's harbor. The siege of Baldur's Gate is over, with the citizens of the city taking up arms against the remaining Illithid. The party, having finally accomplished their goal, take a moment to reflect on the pier as the sun sets behind them. Many celebrations are had, all except Orpheus. The prince turned mind flayer says that he can no longer return to his people. Instead, he asked that Lae'zel pick up where he left off so long ago, continuing the fight against Vlaakith, freeing their people from the god who bounds them.
If I salvage the stones, I can reforge it.
What is his problem?
Ego.
Yeah, so this chode really wants to reforge the crown of Karsus so he can get back into good graces with Mystra. Gale is such a simp. I'm done with him. Just then... Oh, don't do this to me.
Engine's finally cooked. Held on just long enough. So, how'd I do?
Oh, I'm about to cry.
Karlach's time is up. Her engine has finally ran its course, and if she stays on the surface any longer, she's going to be burned to a crisp. So instead, Tanyth promises to stay, going with her down to Avernus, swearing to find a cure for this curse she has. And our first playthrough closes out with one of the most incredible endings any game has ever given.
They'll be on us soon, but there's just enough time. Thought I was done with these.
Yo, what?
She is the coolest fictional character ever created.
But then, there was you.
Yo! Yes! Do you hear this guitar riff?
Yeah.
Holy shit!
Fast, but careless. Don't let them tire you out. Just get rid of them. And don't forget, you asked for this. Better let these f***ers know I'm back.
Yeah.
And this time, I'm not alone.
You're goddamn right.
I think that was the happiest ending you could have ever gotten, Nick.
That is f***ing everything.
As for Rose and Nikki, our beautifully twisted women are presented with the same choice at the end of it all. The Netherbrain is down for the count, but the Emperor is concentrating on holding back the brain. It's at this moment Rose realizes she made the right choice in companions, as Astarion reminds her that nothing is stopping them from ruling the world. Using the power of the Netherstones, Rose assimilates Nikki, Astarion, and Shadowheart, demonstrates her power by wiping out the remaining Githyanki forces and summoning her new unflinching servants, ushering in a new Dark Age where the most powerful being in Faerun is under the control of one corrupted monk.
In my name.
Excuse me? Now, while writing this behemoth of a script, we were blessed with a couple of updates. Updates that address stuff like balancing, character stuff, blah, 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 blah. But one of them was the epilogue update. In the original release of the game, after Nick rode into the fiery sunset with Karlach, we didn't have any other closure on Srein and Tanyth's story. That is until the epilogue update that goes out of its way to enlighten the player on how the lives of our heroes are going since the ending. 6 months after the fall of the Netherbrain, Withers sends out invitations to all playable party members from the adventure, with everyone gathering to see how post-Illithid invasion life is treating them. One of the cool and also obvious features is if you pissed off someone and they left your group permanently, or if they died, they don't show up for this reunion. On Tanyth and Srein's side of the universe, Shadowheart has made peace with having a laid-back life. She started to embrace her individuality to really find herself, taking up little hobbies that even she admits are a little corny, but she's actually happy, and that's what really matters. Lae'zel is off in the stars leading the Githyanki revolution to show her people true freedom instead of worshipping a false god.
Surprising even her is her new foray into diplomatic affairs, which she attributes to seeing the player do during the adventure. Gale is now a professor at a wizard academy and finally let go of his love for Mystra after returning the crown to her. He's still as annoying as ever, but hey, he's happy, so that's something. Will has one of the more interesting changes. Throughout the entire journey, he was someone bound in chains, whether it be by his family history or Mizora, but now that he's free of all that, he kinda just becomes a dude bro monster slayer, bragging about all the cool things he's done and how impressive it is. Which is good for him, but some things never change because all I could ever give him is a measured, yeah man, that's great. Jaheira and Minsk are also here, but the emotional investment just isn't there, so yeah. Boo is probably the best thing about Minsk, and he's a fucking rat. Last, but certainly not least, we have Mother Karlach back in town with her partner in crime, Tanyth. The past 6 months have seen these two raising hell in Avernus, even making a name for themselves down there. Karlach's engine still gives her trouble, so they can't stay for too long, but the dynamic duo have a lead on where to go to fix that permanently. And finally...
I certainly have, and I always will. Forever, I think. And so will you. Do you even have to ask?
He made it out alive. Out of curiosity, we did rewrite history a bit for the evil bitches. You don't get an epilogue if you go totally evil, world domination and all that. So when we got wind of the epilogue update, we reloaded the final moments of that campaign and gave it a normal ending. And it's honestly not all that improved. They've got Shadowheart and Astarion. Shadowheart is still pretty much the same in this timeline, except her and Rose are an official couple. Shadowheart's parents actually live with them, and as this family, they help take care of all sorts of animals on this little farm. One cool thing about this is that little owlbear cub that the gang abducted/adopted back in Act 1 can actually become the newest member of this little family. When it comes to Astarion, he started sowing seeds for his grand design as the Vampire Ascendant, so yeah, he's just Cazador Jr. with the only difference being time. Astarion hasn't done anything explicitly horrible yet, but it's clear to see that the path he's headed down isn't the most morally sound. After speaking with everyone one last time, Rose and Nikki and Srein and Tanyth sit down with all their comrades and wind the evening down.
Until we meet again, I wish thee every possible fortune, health, wealth, love, and above all, problems worth solving.
To the friends I could dream of.
Do what you do.
Yeah.
To you.
The last scene we get is Withers back in his crypt mocking the dead gods that chose Gortash, Orin, and Ketheric. Bane, Baal, and Merkel are all the gods of the dead the old god of the dead chose as his replacements. Jurgul was the sole god of the dead for the longest time, until he tired of his position, handing it down to the three.
Didst truly believe thy ploy would succeed? Didst believe I would not notice?
What? This small scene all but confirms that Withers is Jurgul. The other small piece of evidence is that Jurgul is said to be able to transform into any undead creature, thus the old walking corpse, Withers.
Appearances may change, but they do not mask the one within. This one, I know.
But after all of this, we finally have an end to our tale. I don't have a lot to sum up here because I think the last 30 pages have done enough to illustrate where I think this story succeeds and falls short. While I will reiterate, I don't think the overall narrative is anything you haven't seen before. It's really just a collection of bad guys that find themselves in the player's way on their journey through the Sword Coast. Where it unquestionably shines, though, are the characters. Even though we haven't spent time going into the tiny minutia of each of them, I'm sure there's more to dig into with the ones we did cover. And that's the thing. It's staggering how many layers there are to each and every party member in the game. They can even go in different directions depending on your actions, but it's all consistent with what person Karlach or Lae'zel, Astarion, yes, even Gale, is beneath the direction that the player takes them. And these characters work well as fantasy characters in general, but they also work well as reflections for real-world dilemmas and relationships. They have wonderful things to say, and their stories, with the depth they host, will stay evergreen. And the cast can't be slept on either. Of course, with this game's stratospheric popularity, the actors that portrayed these incredible characters were able to ride the wave, so to speak. All of the performances in this game are legitimately award-worthy. I don't think there's a single bad apple in this bunch. But Neil Newborn as Astarion has got to be one of my favorites. The way he can waltz through his dialogue and deliver the sass along with genuine pain is awe-inspiring. Samantha Beard as Karlach is absolutely mesmerizing, and I can't get enough of them as a person. Especially those videos they did with my dearest Ben Starr.
Do your best impression of the other person's most iconic role.
I have done my duty.
That's really good.
It's not bad, go on.
I want to go to Build-A-Bear.
Straight from the game as well.
Straight from the
Perfect.
game.
Right.
While she's not my favorite character, Deveril Wild as Lae'zel is fantastic. Constantly hitting the nail on the head. Amelia Taylor, the game's narrator, the amount of dialogue this woman alone had to record must have been insane, but she killed it every time. Jennifer English as Shadowheart. Such a great casting choice. She's equal parts conniving and sarcastic, while also overtly flirty almost all the time. During this game's height, and even today if I'm being honest, I get bombarded with the entire cast being total chums on my TikTok.
Gale, old buddy, old pal, chum, as I put my arm around
No, hang on.
Listen here, darling.
I sense where this is going.
Yes. So here's the thing. The people that I'm going to see are very interesting people. However, they do sometimes need persuading.
It's money, isn't it?
It might be cash.
Yeah, I
Yes,
thought
only
so.
cash.
Yeah,
I love these people, and I think Neil Newborn's award was more than justified. But aside from the characters and the set story structure, Baldur's Gate 3's biggest strength is the way in which it believably reacts to all the off-the-wall solutions the player can concoct. The amount of freedom the player has in the story is something that will be remembered for the rest of time, but the freedom everywhere else is just as, if not more, important. I think it's time to finally look at the other side of this coin, the game that's attached to this video game. As anyone who's spent, well, really any amount of time watching this channel will know, I love myself a good action game. Preferably one with a meaty combat system for me to sink my teeth into, meaning that for the longest time, turn-based combat wasn't something I particularly cared for. Recently, I've been far more open to playing turn-based RPGs, and my life has improved significantly because of it. Now, I always have been a fan of strategy games. I think it started when my brother and I played Heroes of Might and Magic on his old shitty laptop long ago. And then we got our hands on the Mystery Dungeon sub-series of Pokemon games, still some of my favorite Pokemon games, period. And I've also played my fair share of Halo Wars 1 and 2. Not to say that Baldur's Gate 3 is a strategy game, but it certainly has more elements to consider than your typical turn-based RPG. BG3 is my first game from Larian Studios though. And as I was playing, I had more than a few friends jump in my DMs to tell me about how Larian is one of those studios. The kind that no matter what the game in question is shaping up to be, they're likely to pick it up on day one purely out of good faith for the studio's track record. My brother-in-law actually gifted me Divinity Original Sin 2 during the writing of this video, and now I'm really looking forward to seeing how that game plays out.
Thanks for that, by the way, Kendall. But before I even touched Baldur's Gate 3, even I couldn't help but hear the overwhelming positivity and everything like that surrounding this game, and most of it was coming from the gameplay side. And as I said, I'm not a Dungeons and Dragons man. I don't have a lot of experience with it, but back in high school, I had a friend who a lot of us would gather at his mom's basement, and he would create campaigns for us to play through, but it never really meshed with me. And I actually, I stole a bunch of his dice, so if you're watching, man, you can't have these back. They're mine now. Now, I do remember trying to replicate the D&D experience whenever I got back home from my friend's house. I would just grab a couple pieces of paper and the rules that I remember off the top of my head, and I would sit my little sister and my cousins down, and we would make notebook paper maps and stuff like that. It was actually fun for a time, but that was about as far as it went. Hey Nick, what's up?
Not much. You talking Baldur's Gate?
Yeah, I'm actually about to get into the gameplay stuff. You want to hop in?
Sure, you could probably use my help anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I'm gonna need a ride home later. Teleportation and all that.
I got you, Pookie.
This is all to say, I am not an expert on the mechanics of D&D, so feel free to correct me if I get any of the details wrong. That goes for the comment section as well as you.
Oh, you know I will.
Well, I say we go ahead and jump headfirst into the battle system. We'll get the basics out of the way, and then hopefully transition into the more in-depth systems as we go. In BG3, mostly everything is determined by a dice roll, a 20-sided die or a D20. A D20 is mainly used for saving throws and ability checks. In conversations, it's shown to you, but it can also be completely invisible when just roaming the game world. These skill benchmarks are all based on what stats the character in question is rocking. Strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma make up the player character's base stat categories, as well as the AC or armor class. A character's armor class is determined by the quality of armor and shield equipped. Armor can be heavy, medium, or light. As you can imagine, the heavier the armor, the more points the character has to their AC, but this also detrimentally affects most of the dexterity modifiers they might have. These will be the types of benchmarks or checks that the party will constantly run into from the start of the adventure up until the end. Say someone is attempting to identify a hidden object in the environment. The character will need to pass an investigation check. These are dictated by the character's intelligence stat. In the case of these environmental happenings, this will all be done automatically. If the dice roll was successful, your character will see the hidden object. No more effort required from the player besides maybe clicking on it to interact with it. Most of these interactions are totally invisible to the player, keeping the gameplay snappy. There's also what's called a saving throw. These determine whether or not your character can save themselves from certain situations. They're triggered by attacks of all kinds, whether or not a character is afflicted with a status effect.
Go ahead, cast it. Blind bitch. They can't see!
As well as the ability to safely pass over traps within the world. They also come into play with spells. Any type of spell that remains active for multiple turns relies on a character's concentration. By taking damage or being interrupted in general, the character in question can have their concentration broken. This is all done through saving throws. These are also skewed one way or another by a character's stats. For incoming or outgoing damage, the character's armor class makes it far more difficult to hit the target altogether. Early on in the adventure, attacks will miss more frequently because of the party's low stats and the enemy's proportionally high AC. But as the party grows stronger, the likelihood for their attacks gets greater. But there are more intentional checks like lockpicking doors and chests. This is a job for the dexterity stat. Now, Srein isn't the most cunning or graceful individual with a fairly substandard dexterity stat, but Rose on the other hand is totally in her element with athletic tasks, gaining a +3 to any roll she gets regarding dexterity. But Rose is also unlikely to use cunning on something she could just as easily break open with her bare hands, like a solid stone wall.
And conversation checks are no different, don't forget about that.
I did touch on them, but feel free to dive deeper.
Well, certain options in dialogue will require a successful check. Any character can attempt these if not specific to something like race or class, but the odds increase through bonuses depending on the character's stats in the tested category. Similar to Srein being better at scholarly matters or medicine, and Rose being better at making people flinch. To reiterate, it leads to a game that legit feels infinitely replayable when you can see the same interaction play out in 2 or 4 completely different ways purely through conversation. One thing we did find ourselves wanting was a way to swap out characters for the current conversation.
Exactly. Say we were facing a check that's not great for a character who's speaking, but someone else in the party would be perfect to tag in. Only the game doesn't allow for that. Whoever started the conversation is locked into that conversation, unless some outside force does something to either participant. It does make total sense balancing wise, like if you had access to 4 different characters who likely have all the bases covered for just about every stat category in the game, there wouldn't be a lot of that juicy tension in conversations. Tension that, if I'm being real, can almost always be circumvented by a quick trip to the pause menu.
Let me make a save.
The amount of times I had to make a save,
I'll make a save.
Or Nick asked me to make a save.
Alright, you want to make a save?
Yeah, was incalculable by the time credits rolled on our first playthrough. This game, not unlike, say, Bethesda RPGs, allow you to save your progress at any point. And this will create restore points for the players if they find themselves in a situation that they really don't want to fuck up. The ability to save mid-conversation felt like cheating a lot of the time.
It did help us see more of the game though, so I'm not complaining.
No, you're right, it was fun. It's thanks to save states that we were able to see things like Raphael saving the day at the last moment and the evil bitch's epilogue.
And if you don't like the idea, you can just not use it. Or in the new honor mode, which limits the session to only 1 save for the entire playthrough. And if you die, it's a permanent game over. And I speak from experience, it gets brutal.
Yeah, I didn't have a desire to tackle that yet. Maybe some other time. But now let's talk basic actions. At the start of every single battle, every character, whether it be an NPC, player controlled, or an enemy, will roll a d20. This is for initiative, or the order in which characters will act. The results of this will always be shown at the top of the screen. Looking more towards the characters individually, we have the resources they use to act. Every participant in the battle has a predetermined amount of movement they can use. This simply determines how much of the arena they can traverse in a single turn. Once it's run out, the character is stuck for the remainder of that turn unless acted upon by another character. Each character and class has specific abilities we'll get to momentarily, but right now, let's look at this area of the HUD. These are the resources. This green circle represents a character's action. This is typically what a character's turn revolves around. Their main action, as it's sometimes called. Things like swinging a weapon or doing a main attack. Lots of magic users have spells that require an action to cast. Even using the throw command costs your action. Whether that's hurling a spare weapon at an enemy or throwing the appropriate one-use item, the trade-off must be considered. But before a creature's turn is over, they have a bonus action too. This is used for several purposes. Some attacks and spells often cost a bonus action, either giving the character a means to throw out an additional healing spell after their main action, or maybe use a number of one-use items. Some classes are built around attacking more than once during a single turn. This is facilitated by bonus actions a lot of the time. They could also gain some extra distance on the battlefield thanks to the dash ability, adding to a character's base movement. The jump command can be used mid-battle for strategic purposes, and one of my personal favorites is the shove command. This ability, depending on the attacking character's success in a strength check, pushes an enemy backwards. This can be used to give some distance, but it can also be used to push them off ledges for extra damage, and if you're lucky, down a chasm for an instant death. This is more of an occurrence for the first half of the game though, because as you progress, the bottomless chasms become less prevalent, almost acting as a crutch for early combat encounters, but in reality, it was just getting you acclimated to the freedom you're soon to experience in battles. But the final type of basic resource is the reaction. These trigger when an opposing character readies a specific type of attack at the player. Depending on the reaction, it'll ask the player if they want to use it. They're typically an ability or an attack that stops the enemy's action and possibly even turns it against them. The most common type of reaction you will go up against, by far, is the opportunity attack. This simply turns the character into a sentinel. Not to be confused with the reaction of the same name, but opportunity attack, once per turn, will target any opposing creature that runs within range and will throw a main attack at their face. The player's party members can have this too, of course, but it was constantly one of those things that I forgot about.
Yeah, you sure did forget a lot.
Hey, it didn't affect you.
Bullshit. You nearly messed up the run with some of them.
Oh. Damn it. Later in the second playthrough, my monk learned a reaction called Deflect Missile. This allowed her to roll for a chance to not only stop any incoming arrows, but also potentially send it back at the enemy.
I love Psionic Backlash, letting me deal damage to an enemy once per round if they cast a spell of any kind on any character in the fight. But later Tanyth learned Psionic Dominance, which let me completely cancel any spell an enemy used with no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And speaking of mages, let's discuss a few character-specific resources. Some characters have a resource that is only needed to use abilities that their class specifically uses. The most common example, every mage in the game has a spell charge. These come in tiers from 1 to 6. 1 being less powerful or game-changing, with 6 being the last level of a spell you get. So yeah, you can imagine them being pretty helpful, but the thing is, mages have far fewer of the higher level charges than the lower level ones. So they're certainly more helpful, but they can only be used so many times. And there are multiple spells of multiple types, mind you, that use the same type of charge, meaning you often have to decide whether or not to use that level 5 or 6 charge on that powerful spell that can give you a strategic advantage. Or do you save it for a big party heal when the group really needs it? That decision is up to you.
Same thing goes for monks, but with slightly less thoughtfulness if you ask me. Monks spend key charges. This allows them to bust out flurry attacks. These attacks allow them to pull off a hard-hitting move that strikes twice for the cost of 1 bonus action and key charge. The monk's key charges are also spent on its self-heal that comes in handy, but it's not as effective as your party's dedicated healer by this point, so I usually just save key charges for beatdowns. All these class-specific resources don't recharge after every encounter, by the way. If you use a charge in a fight, it will still be spent at the start of the next fight in a few minutes. Outside of a few rare items that restore charges through certain circumstances, the only way to restore charges is to rest. Using supplies scavenged from the world, the party can head to camp at just about any time. Here is where a lot of the character interactions happen. Certain events will trigger when specific plot points are hit, or a new level of affinity is hit for a companion. This will cause new dialogue to unlock at the camp. This is also where Scratch is available for a good game of fetch, and Withers stays around for characters to reroll their class and stats completely for a measly 100 gold per use. Yeah, if you really wanted to, you could pretty easily go into every battle with a completely different build. It might put a dent in your gold pouch if you choose to do that, but the option is there. But anyway, back on track. The main reason to go to camp is to sleep every night. This will simply give you a long rest at the cost of some food, but it totally restores all party members' health. It refills all unique class resources like like spell charges or key points, and it gives the party 2 short rests. These allow the party to immediately get half their health back anywhere in the overworld without the use of items or spell charges. And for monks, short rests are all they need to regain their key charges. So the ass kicking stops for no one.
But long resting should really be a regular occurrence. Even in our second playthrough, I think we were too stingy with our camp supplies.
Yeah, well, we're both very explorative players. I know I checked every small pot, cabinet, and hole in the wall. And anytime you find supplies, it goes to your camp supplies pouch. Very out of sight, out of mind conveniently.
This led to us having more food than we ever needed in both playthroughs. And this was exacerbated in the second playthrough when Shadowheart learned the level 6 spell, Hero's Feast, which not only healed the entire party and gave everyone 12 additional hit points, and made them immune to several stats effects like poison and disease. It spawned a chest with an ass load of supplies for the party just to take. So you essentially have unlimited long rests at that point, because long rest gives you level 6 charges, and this level 6 spell gives you supplies to long rest. Take my word, don't be afraid to long rest often, especially by late game.
Let's talk about the classes themselves now.
Say less, I'll start.
Okay.
Barbarians are the heavy damage dealers, using a rage mechanic to boost attack damage, as well as gaining advantage on strength checks. Bards are performers. They aren't much for damage themselves, but they are one of the best, if not the best support class in the game, giving buffs to the party and allowing them to go beyond their usual output, allowing them to talk their way out of situations more often than not. They're essentially the status effect Pokemon.
Clerics are decent at dealing damage with melee weapons and divine spells too, but similarly to the Bard, they are best used as a support class. Clerics also have the most subclasses within the classes. We'll get to those later. But clerics can either lean even further towards a healing role or become a cleric of divine light and burn everything to a crisp. Druids are pretty unique. All classes can be flexible with the roles they settle into in a party, but the druid has so many potential applications. They can focus on physical damage, magical damage, special nature-themed spells, but what most druids specialize in are the transformations, morphing into several different ferocious animal forms to fight enemies. When I eventually come back for a third playthrough, druid is the class I'll likely go to. Fighters, simply put, are best with weapons. They're straight up the melee or ranged combatant, decent health and survivability and great proficiency with all armaments. Monks are the opposite, totally relying on their fist to get a job done, and actively losing bonuses for equipping weapons that aren't specific to them. I loved my time with the monk class. Paladins are knights that are good at their job, but they come with a terms and service agreement. However, if they don't keep true to the tenets of a paladin, such as not killing unless attacked first, stealing...
Sounds like a good fit for our first playthrough.
Yeah, exactly, but if they don't keep their oath intact, they become an Oathbreaker, a subclass that's not available on the class selection menu, keeping the physical combat prowess of the paladin but becoming more focused on undead manipulation. Sounds pretty cool, to be honest.
The ranger is the dedicated archer class. I feel like that one's self-explanatory. Same with the rogue for the most part. The thief or the assassin is what awaits you down this road. We had some fun with this in playthrough 2, so we'll go more in depth in a moment. Lastly, we have sorcerers, wizards, and warlocks, which are the main spellcasting classes, but they all have their own unique spin on the spellcasting. Wizards are your simple big brain nerds that love to study any spell they can get their hands on. They have a spellbook that you can access anytime outside of combat, and this allows them to pick the right spell for the right occasion. Scrolls are one-use items that are extremely helpful in a pinch, allowing any character, regardless of stats, spell charges, or class, to cast powerful magic. But wizards can learn these spells permanently and can pull them out of the spellbook whenever they're needed. This also includes level 5 and higher spells, making wizards magical Swiss army knives on the battlefield. Sorcerers are conduits of the weave itself. They have no need to study something that comes naturally to them. Their subclasses will determine what spells you unlock as you progress through the game. My favorite by far was the Storm Sorcerer subclass. Utilizing this, Tanyth had plenty of ways to deal tons of lightning damage, fly across the battlefield, and become the very definition of a glass cannon. I'm sure you're getting sick of us saying this, but we'll cover how broken this gets later on, so don't you worry. Even still, every sorcerer subclass is worth the investment. Warlocks are warriors that have made a pact with some sort of evil deity to be able to channel the dark arts. In simple terms, you make a deal with the devil, and now you can shoot eldritch blasts, summon pools of darkness, and cast many other simple spells. Warlocks don't have nearly as many spell slots as wizards and sorcerers, so they're more of a sword and magic gun kind of build.
As you could imagine, each class will help bring specific stats to the table during a playthrough. Just to give some examples, when it comes to sorcerers, warlocks, bards, and paladins, The biggest damage modifier for them is the charisma stat, which provides different bonuses. It can add bigger numbers to your damage rolls or speech checks. So say you needed to pass a persuasion check with one of these classes, you get the base d20 roll plus that charisma modifier, which can easily swing things in your favor. Monks, rangers, and thieves excel where their dexterity is higher, allowing them to do certain actions easier than others. Again, it's very self-explanatory, but I felt it was important to give an example or two on how class building works in a basic sense. That way, when we're deep diving later, this will already be in your mind. Similar to any other RPG you play, you learn these new spells and abilities for your characters by completing quests and defeating enemies to gain experience points and leveling up. The progression through levels is noteworthy. With every 4th level up, you're able to choose a feat from this selection. The level cap is 12, making for a total of 3 perks per character. Feats include several active and passive bonuses. These are often game changers that make, break, or bolster the build you're going for. In the second playthrough, Shadowheart played the role of our tank healer, so it was crucial that she be given the Tough feat, a feat that gives 2 additional hit points for every level the character grows, increasing the character's health pool by 26 at the end of the game. Rose got Tavern Brawler ASAP, adding her strength modifiers to any unarmed attack or thrown attacks twice.
When we repurpose Astarion for his assassin/ranger build, we use the sharpshooter feat, which cancels out any penalties versus high ground targets, allowing for consistent damage on enemies even if they had the height advantage on them. Oh, Tanyth. This is where things start to get fun. Picking up the Elemental Adept feat gives the player the choice to ignore elemental resistances for one type of element. And since Tanyth is a walking thundercloud of nightmares, I obviously chose lightning. Nikki was a fighter, so most of her feats made her, more often than not, hit really hard. Savage Attacker allows you to roll your base damage dice twice and take the highest result for an attack roll. She also had the Great Weapon Master feat, which allows you to make another attack with a bonus action if you get a critical hit or kill something in the same turn. Also, fun fact, Battle Master subclass for the fighter gets a bonus feat at level 6 and an additional extra attack at level 11, so you can imagine how much fun a max level fighter can have. But similar to everything else in the game, this system is amazingly balanced because around every 4th level is when you reach the end of a major story beat, giving those juicy peaks in the narrative a gameplay punch by handing each of your characters a feat, making it feel like your party gain a sizable increase to their abilities after these huge ordeals. It's just great balance you love to see.
Speaking of, each act in Baldur's Gate 3 is its own open world, I guess you could say. Or you could call it an open zone if you're a hipster or a blue hedgehog. Your party will make their way through areas big and small, getting in and out of trouble. Whether that's a battle or a conversation, this is the essence of Baldur's Gate 3, using the tools at your disposal to overcome challenges. And where I, and assuredly everyone else, found the most enjoyment is seeing how wacky your solutions to these problems can be. I think I even highlighted this aspect a few times in the story summary, but to paraphrase the late and great Satoru Iwata, on BG3's business card it says turn-based CRPG, but in its heart, it's an immersive sim. In games like Dishonored or Deus Ex, the game presents you with a problem and drops you in feet first and asks you to solve it. In the same way conversations can go 20 different ways depending on the player's actions, that same logic applies to every aspect of the game's world and combat encounters. Sometimes there's a hint on how to go about it, but all the time there are ridiculously creative ways to go about completing these objectives. Methods so off the way that you think there's no way that should have worked, only for the game to acknowledge that method, even give you a wink or a nod, reacting to and validating your creativity. Baldur's Gate 3 is that personified, and here are a lot of reasons why. We timed a barrel explosion in the beginning of the game. Yo. The battlefields will often be littered with hazards that can spell your party's defeat or victory. You just have to play it smart. Explosives came in clutch the entire time. They have several benefits aside from just dealing a lot of damage, but our magnum opus when it came to explosives was concocted towards the end of our second playthrough. So check this out. This is Answer. Answer was actually the best friend of Baldurin, the founder of Baldur's Gate. It's also worth mentioning that dragons in the world of Baldur's Gate can transform into a humanoid form. These humanoid dragons eventually became their own race called Dragonborn. That's how he and Baldurin were able to become such good friends. It's also possible to reunite the pair of old friends through normal play. All you gotta do is bring Baldurin to Ansar's undead corpse beneath the city. But we're still missing one member of the duo, I hear you asking. We're actually not. We've been traveling with the great founder of Baldur's Gate since this journey started. He just looks a little different.
Hi, how are you?
Yup, this emotional manipulator creep is actually Baldurin.
And let me tell you, we were eating this shit up like the next episode of Desperate Housewives.
Yes. And more. Until you killed me.
Oh. It's great, but that's not why we're here. Ansar can be considered one of the game's only optional super bosses, and he is tough. So tough that when we found him, we had pretty much just started Act 3. We got our ass kicked a few times before realizing we just need to come back later. Shortly after, we found a fireworks shop. So after clearing out the enemies inside, we began stuffing our pockets. I had also been collecting explosive barrels for the hell of it throughout this playthrough. You can store an unlimited amount of items at the camp, so I had just been hoarding them. And after clearing that store, we decided it was time to pay Ansar another visit. But this time, cover his gravesite with appropriate decorations. This is just absolute goon shit.
Alright, you ready?
Let her rip. And he's still not even half health. It was still a tough fight after the head start, but we eventually got him. Never underestimate the power of hoarding.
Ross alluded to this earlier with the all-powerful shove move, but the level design in Baldur's Gate is especially noteworthy. The verticality and the terrain advantages have to be considered in every encounter. Ranged attacks have limits, as you can imagine. That arrow or fireball can't fly all the way across the battlefield, of course. Just like how ranged attacks have disadvantages if your target is above you or out of range. As you ready a ranged attack, you can see the percentage chance of the attack succeeding as you hover over different targets. Obviously, there are still choices being made, but it's nice that the game is so transparent with what the height advantage is doing for your chances in battle. This is why skills that reposition characters are immensely important. One of the best movement abilities in the game is the Misty Step, a basic teleportation spell that warps the user instantly to a location within their range, without triggering an enemy's reaction to hit you when you go out of their melee range, meaning Rosh can be safe from those scary opportunity attacks.
Whatever.
This is a move that never really outlives its usefulness for the duration of the playthrough.
And in a similar fashion, one of my favorite spells was the Thorn Whip. It only does a small amount of damage, true, but it also pulls the enemy towards the caster. In the same vein, we have the Telekinesis spell. It can be used on enemies like we demonstrate here. Shadowheart throws a Steel Watcher back down to the lower level after it had jumped up to assault Tanyth. In the grand scheme of things, it really didn't change much about the fight or do a lot of damage, it just kind of felt cool to do. But in the second playthrough in the battle against Myrkul, Rose was incapacitated, but on Myrkul's platform, which gives any character the Bone Shield status. This prevents them from recovering any health, meaning Rose couldn't be revived even if someone could reach her. Thankfully, I had a Scroll of Telekinesis, using it to plop Rose in front of Shadowheart and away from the Bone Shield effect. You've got to take every piece of land and every little set dressing on the battlefield into account. The layout can either be a huge advantage or a potential game over caliber disadvantage. It's all about how you approach the environment.
Take our assault on Moonrise Towers in both playthroughs. Ross and I were as green as grass when going through the place with Tanyth and Srein. We saw those rafters at the beginning of the fight and made it our entire personality. However, since anyone up there was the closest thing to the estimated 20 enemies in that room, they would all target those characters and wipe us out in no time flat. Whereas with Nikki and Rose, we had a radically different approach. Since they had burned the bridge with the survivors at the last light in, there was no invasion force. Using their different traversal abilities, the party climbed the tower without alerting anyone, sneaking in through a side door straight onto the second floor. From here, the fight begins. Only now, after clearing out the handful of enemies on the top floor, enemies that gave us so much trouble in the first playthrough are all having to come to us. The only reasonable path to the girls was a small hallway and a staircase. So initially we used the spell, the Guardian of Faith, which always deals 20 damage to anyone who walks within its range. This worked for a while, but it also loses 20 health every time it attacks. Then we upgraded to Spike Growth, a spell that covers a selected area and damaging spikes that also decreases the movement of any character that traverses it, i.e. the f***ers that wanted a piece of our evil coochies, and that got us some serious results. The thorns were so damaging that it confused some of the enemies, causing them to run in circles below us. The enemies that did walk up there would have their health reduced before they reached us, and Nikki Nikki and Rose can pick them off at the edge of the thorns while Astarion stayed safe, with Shadowheart eventually casting darkness over the thorns so they couldn't hit us with range attacks through the hallway. This was great. And then in the boss fight above, the evil bitches used the exact same strategy. This might be cheesy to some, but this is the tactician playthrough, and our actions saw an extra boss added to this boss fight. This spider dude was fucking awful. It took us a while to realize that darkness neutered his and Kethric's range, meaning that our characters could dip in and out of the darkness and get hits with minimal risk. It was a little more risky since the area was more open, but it got results.
Dude, terrain spells saved us so many times. While in the Githyanki compound after the evil bitches were unable to have their tadpoles removed, the Gith were ready to eliminate the girls, but luckily, Shadowheart had a scroll of black tentacles, which behaves very similarly to Astarion's thorns, but it doesn't do as much damage. My favorite terrain spell though would have to be the Blade Barrier. This is a late game spell and it uses a level 6 charge, so it shouldn't be taken lightly, but if you can use it correctly, it'll make all the difference in battle. After the Sharran followers turned on Rose and Nikki, we were totally outnumbered. Luckily, Shadowheart was a level 11 Cleric by that point, meaning she could throw up a Blade Barrier. The spell conjures up a wall of blades that do 6 to 60 damage per few steps the enemy takes. It would be tempting to just make a wall of blades to block us from the enemy, but that wouldn't result in the most damage. So instead, I've been keen on angling the walls, making sure the enemies are forced to walk through it as much as possible. And similar to Spike Growth, this spell confuses the AI so badly. They have no idea how to cope with it, trying so hard to figure out what to do before ultimately just walking through it. I learned this from the final battle in the first playthrough as well. There's a long, narrow path connected to one of the upper sections of the rampart, and enemies just ran through the blades there too, opening my eyes to the possibilities in the second playthrough. It's unavoidable that the more you play the game, the more you'll look at even the first areas and come up with entirely new plans for even the simplest of fights. Another thing we really didn't use until the later half of Act 3 in our first playthrough was the importance of different status effects during combat. At the docks in the lower city, the party will get jumped by a lot of weird fishman guys that are obviously drenched from living in the ocean. They had the wet status effect, which doubles any form of lightning or frost damage they receive.
Once again, with Tanyth's storm magic, he was able to double his already insane damage, which begged the question, should he use his first turn to summon water in every fight? That way he pumps out as much damage as possible? This encounter helped us reach an even deeper understanding of combat. Now, anytime anyone had any kind of status effect on them, we would always make sure to fully understand how to work around it. And it really shows in playthrough too. We would always make sure to right click enemies before we took actions to see what they were weak or resistant to. But this helped us see further. In Act 2, almost every enemy would take double damage from radiant based attacks, and Shadowheart's Beyblade move was practically an easy button. Everyone would just gather around her and we just let the enemies take care of themselves. The fight against the colony of pissed off rats basically finished itself for us.
These status effects can also turn an encounter into anyone's game, and there's so many buffs and debuffs that I won't be able to list them all, but here are some of the ones we would use the most. Bless allows you and or one of your allies to get an additional 1d4 when making any kind of attack. Hold Person lets you, well, hold a humanoid enemy in place if they fail the saving throw, but if they do, they're practically dead. Any attack landed on a held enemy is immediately a critical strike. Silence Aura allows you to throw a bubble that prevents anyone in it from casting spells when inside. This comes in handy when fighting against mages, as you could expect. It could also be a good strategy for pure melee users to use when fighting against a magic user. Sources of cold damage like Ray of Frost, Ice Storm, and etc. can apply the Chilled status effect, which cuts down movement by around 30%. When it comes to fire, any source, whether it be Infernal, Holy Fire, or something in between, can give you a variation on the burn status. It inflicts chip damage, and this can even extend to your weapons as well. If the heat status effect is applied to a weapon, the character will drop the weapon automatically.
Two kinds of status effects that we didn't use a whole lot, but good God if it wasn't used against us like all the time, was Blind and Sleep. Sleep is pretty self-explanatory, but Blind was such a bitch when casted. It does three things to its target: limits how far you can see, makes you easier to hit, and makes it where you can't hit jack shit.
Now, magic isn't the only way to have these status effects come into play. Just as many come in physical forms as well. For starters, you have the aforementioned Sneak, which, depending on your build, will give you more and more bonuses when hidden. The Stealthier status gives you +3 to stealth checks, which stacks with the Heavily Obscured status, making you undetectable unless you're too close to the target. All of these play into the Hidden effect, and later on you can get pieces of gear and weapons that give you even more bonuses when hidden. Melee attacks can inflict all kinds of conditions. Prone makes the enemy fall down, wasting half of their next turn's movement speed to get back up unless they succeed a saving throw. Dazing an enemy makes them lose their reactions and takes away any dexterity bonuses to their armor class. One step up from Dazed is Stun, which makes it to where the target can't take any actions, bonus actions, or reactions at all. Applying Bleed makes the target take 2 additional damage each turn. Using an archer's Hamstrung shot forfeits half the target's movement speed. The 2 statuses that really swing the battle in one's favor are Frightened and Disarming. Frightened stops the target from moving as well as having disadvantage on ability checks and attack rolls. Only bad part is it was used quite a bit on us. Disarming knocks the target's weapon out of their hand, meaning they have to use an action to re-equip their weapon on the following turn. Or if you want to be a little bastard, you can take their weapon and leave them with nothing to attack with.
But these are just what we remember from our playthrough. There's still loads of status effects, conditions, and methods when playing this game. We would genuinely be here all day if we went through all of them. I feel like the best way to tackle this is to go into each build we did for our main party members, reveal the goods, and tell you guys all about our most used abilities and strategies.
Couldn't agree more, Nicholas. I'll start us off with Srein, my life domain cleric. My primary focus with him was, how can I heal the homies most efficiently? For the first playthrough, Srein's role first and foremost was to keep the party healed up. Cure Wound heals a creature that Srein can physically touch, costing an action. Mass Healing Word is able to heal any ally within a radius with it taking a bonus action. These are the building blocks of my very crude heal build. By choosing the Life Domain subclass, he's granted a passive at level 6 that heals a small amount of his own HP for every ally he heals, including himself. This is the combo that makes clerics really powerful healers. Looking back though, the party comp we were rocking in the first playthrough was pretty stupid. Well, I mean, Srein and Shadowheart were both clerics and I essentially had them doing very similar things. For offense, Srein very seldom used his melee weapons. If it was best to not use a spell charge, Sacred Flame only cost an action, but it wasn't the most damaging attack. But if he or playthrough 1 Shadowheart needs to deal damage, Guiding Bolt was the way to go. It's not as effective as any of the other party members' attacks, but it could contribute when need be for raw damage numbers. But get them in the right scenario and clerics were our secret weapon. When the party reaches Act 2 and begin battling undead, the clerics have 2 spells that can turn the tide. Spirit Guardians, or the Beyblades as Nick called them.
Because they're fucking Beyblades.
They deal radiant damage. These shred undead enemies. As long as the caster can keep concentration, the Beyblades stay around for up to 10 turns. And in the second playthrough, we discovered the Warcaster feat. This gives advantage on saving throws for maintaining concentration on spells. But that's not even the best part. This is Turn Undead. Undead type enemies within range will take 4d6 radiant damage, with the chance to also turn the creatures too, making them flee from the caster for a turn. No lie, using Turn Undead, we had a much easier time with Merkel. We were surprised by the difficulty when we fought him on the second playthrough, but then we remembered that we got really lucky with back-to-back successful Turn Undeads. Same thing happened when we were in the Illithid colony beneath Moonrise Tower. The zombies and greater zombies were bunched together and it was a beautiful sight. The only bad thing with this spell is that it costs a channeled divinity charge and each cleric only has 1 per long rest. Then we have spirit weapons. Costing a level 2 charge, these flimsy beat sticks are decent damage dealers, but their best application were as walking, or rather floating, meat shields. They could take attention away from the main party members or disrupt enemies from far away because of their long cast range. But like I mentioned in the story summary, Srein was an asset in conversations as well, most notably with animals. Srein was able to use the Speak with Animals ability. This leads to several scenarios like the previously mentioned mutating bull. But I was tricked into believing I could help that bull because of this moment earlier in the playthrough. These deep gnomes are forcing these Wrath to work under terrible conditions. Srein, speaking with the Wrath, convinces them to rebel with a successful animal handling check. And with their combined efforts, the Wrath are freed.
If you know me, you know that I'm a sucker for any kind of mage build in almost any game I play. So the intelligence-based Sorcerer was an easy pick, but similar to all the other party members at that point, Tanyth in the early game was very hit or miss. The spell spell charges, bonus actions, and the cantrips really didn't make any sense to us yet. So it was rough up until about level 6. This is when I felt the class gained some momentum. Obtaining the class sub-feature Heart of the Storm, which grants extra damage when you cast lightning or thunder spells, plus some resistance to lightning and thunder damage for good measure. You also gained 5 free spells on top of everything else you've unlocked thus far. All these spells are storm related, as you can imagine. Call Lightning and Create Water are the bread and butter of the catalog. But don't sleep on Thunderwave or Gust of Wind. They came in handy a time or two. From what I hear though, the underdog spell was Sleep Storm.
It wasn't something you used a lot in this playthrough.
True, but in my honor playthrough, dude, it was goated. Getting back on track though, Tanyth became more refined the further we went. Any equipment that had the word lightning, charisma, or magic damage had me foaming at the mouth. Most of this gear came in Act 3. My weapon of choice was the Marco
Hesh gear.
Show off. This legendary staff comes with loads of benefits. It grants you Arcane Enchantment, which gives you a +1 to spell save DC rolls and spell attack rolls. Arcane Battery causes the next spell cast to not cost a spell charge. Kareska's Favor, which allows you to imbue a character with elemental energy of your choosing. With Lightning, Bolts of Doom is activated, making the character's lightning spells deal additional damage equal to your proficiency bonus. As if that wasn't enough, this also grants you a free use of Lightning Bolt and Chain Lightning, which we'll get into in a second. Now, Tana's proficiency is Charisma, which is where his cute little hat, Birthright, comes in. This hat gives him a +2 to the Charisma stat, and it can go above 20. So with the 22 Charisma, that's a +6 to anything Charisma related. And that's before counting in the proficiency bonus. His robes, the Robe of the Weave, also give him the Arcane Enchantment buff, so another +1 to spell saves and spell attack rolls. Plus Weave Eater, a perk that allows the wearer to heal 1d6 anytime they succeed a spell saving throw. Okay, so now let's take all that and add the Sorcerer class abilities to the mix. Sorcerers are able to use meta magic with sorcery points. Meta magic abilities allow you to modify your spells from extending their range on them to being able to cast buff spells normally meant for one person onto 2 people instead. As you can imagine, these all cost sorcery points to activate. Characters gain more sorcery points the more they level up. The meta magic Quicken Spell allows you to use a bonus action for the spell cast instead of an action. Let's look at the Chain Lightning spell.
I'm so excited about that.
It's a level 6 lightning spell that does 8d10 worth of damage before the charisma bonuses, and the bolts can jump to up to 3 additional targets.
My God.
It should be a once per long rest kind of spell, but with this build, we can use it more due to the Marco Cuban.
Jesus Christ.
Shut up, giving us a free use. Then we can use our meta magic to use our bonus action to cast again. Plus, we'll use the Arcane Battery to eat that spell charge instead of the player, so if somehow anything survives past this point on your next turn, you can still have another Chain Lightning in the chamber. Needless to say, I RPG'd the shit out of Tanyth.
Nah, I gotta give it to you, man. That's the most in-depth and game-breaking any of our builds ever got. It was so good that it honestly felt unfair at times.
You cool if I get Astarion too?
Of course. Twink is all yours, dude.
During our first playthrough, I really wanted to have some type of rogue archer build, and I dilly-dallied in stealth for a bit with playthrough 1 Astarion, but I never really got deep into it because that's when Mommy Karlach came into our lives, and but once we decided he was going to be part of the evil lineup, I was able to spend a lot of time with the little vampire twink and craft my second favorite build, the sniper class. As Ross mentioned earlier, you by the way, I was double dipping into another playthrough while we were doing the evil bitches. I ran a Gloomstalker Ranger, giving me the framework of what I wanted to do with Astarion in my head. To start things off, we want to make him as sneaky as possible so he's constantly getting the bonus damage with his shots. Astarion was normally our opening hitter, and boy, could this dude hit hard. At level 3, the Gloomstalker class gets Dread Ambusher. This has a melee and a range variant, and allows the character to get +3 to the initiative roll, bonus movement speed, and they can make an additional attack that does an extra 1d8 worth of damage. You also get Dread Ambusher Hide, which allows you to hide from enemies using your bonus action. At level 5, you get Misty Step, which is always prepared, and an extra attack.
Doesn't every melee-based class get an extra attack at level 5?
Yep, that'll actually save us some time later.
You're welcome.
Okay, back to Twink. We now have the opening Dread Ambusher attack, plus 2 more attacks for our opening move. We get the Ranger part of this build up to level 7, and then we dip into multi-classing. We dump these last 5 levels.
Hold up. Sorry to interrupt, but don't you think we should explain how multi-classing works before that?
Yeah, I guess we can go over that real quick.
Okay, sure. I got you.
So multi-classing is undoubtedly where Baldur's Gate 3's build crafting gets its deepest. As early as level 2, you can begin leveling up another class, separate from the one you chose at the start on the same character, allowing you to gain exclusive abilities from another class to combine them with other exclusive abilities from a totally different class. Now, of course, this has its benefits, as we'll explain in a moment, but you also have to weigh the decision before you make it. Let's say you began as a paladin, leveled up 5 times, but now you want to gain some offensive magic and spec into sorcerer. Well, on your 6th level up, you're going to gain all of the level 1 sorcerer abilities, with the downside being your growth as a paladin stops. Meaning, yes, if you multi-class, you can be well-rounded, but you'll never be able to reach max level with any class. Take us deeper, would you, Nicholas?
Yep, so as I was saying, 7 levels of Ranger, and the final 5 levels, we swap to the Rogue class with a Miner and Assassin for some very important abilities. At level 3, the Assassin subclass receives Assassin's Alacrity, which allows the character to get their action and bonus action back at the start of combat, giving Astarion's arrows some insurance. If they don't do enough damage to kill off rip and combat starts as a result, he gets to go in just as fresh as everyone else. This setup also grants Assassinate Ambush, which lets the user get automatic critical hits on surprised enemies, with the last ability being Assassinate Initiative, which grants him advantage rolls on any creature that hasn't taken their turn yet. This also pairs nicely with the Sneak Attack range move, which allows you to do up to 1d6 worth of bonus damage as long as you have advantage on that enemy. This scales up with how many levels you have in the Rogue class, so with 5 levels, here 1, it does 3d6 worth of bonus damage. In Act 3, weapons and armor really became crucial to the min-maxing, and this is immediately evident with the first bow obtained in the city, the Dead Shot, reducing the roll needed to make a critical hit by 1, doubling the proficiency bonus with range attacks while it's equipped, but frankly, it doesn't compare to the Gaunter Mail. Gaunter Mail is a legendary longbow that can possibly inflict Guiding Bolt on its target, while also granting the wielder the Celestial Haste Bolt of Celestial Light. The loop here is to catch someone by surprise with an arrow which inflicts the Guiding Bolt condition, thus giving the next attack advantage on that target. Then we can hit him with a sneak attack to get the bonus damage, then use Dread Ambusher to get another arrow in. And if they somehow make it through all of that, you still have another shot aimed at them. But that's literally 4 arrows. And that's not including the crits, special arrows, or the shots fired before the combat officially starts.
Nothing will stand in my way.
Now, the gear to get with this build is anything that lowers the roll of a crit. If it does, wear it immediately. Find anything that says that and slap it on. Probably should have mentioned this earlier, but critical hits occur when an attack roll naturally lands on a 20. So you can't rely on a plus 10 or so to bump you up. However, you can keep dragging that requirement down for a better crit chance. Even though Astarion is a full-blown ranger, having melee weapons with special bonuses still grant him those bonuses. Bloodthirst and Rhapsody are the 2 daggers he always had on deck. Bloodthirst makes criticals more likely, and Rhapsody gives him better attack rolls the more kills he's had racked up between long rests. It does only stack up to 3 times, so don't get your hopes up too high. The Shade Slayer Cloak, which reduces the number needed to trigger a critical hit by 1 as long as you're hiding. And for the main piece of armor, we have the Elegant Studded Leather, which gives you a +2 on initiative rolls and advantage on stealth checks.
Damn, I didn't even realize how much you put into this, dude.
Yeah.
Well, I thought I was being a good gopher by keeping you stocked up on those special arrows.
Oh no, dude, you were great.
You have your basic elemental arrows like acid, fire, or ice arrows. These were obviously good for certain elemental weaknesses. But then you also have specific use arrows like arrows of transposition. These act as a means of travel in fights, warping the user to the location it's fired. Certain enemy types like fiends or dragons will have arrows that deal increased damage to those classes specifically. Only thing is, you have to make sure those actions are successful.
Well, there went the dragon arrow.
Oh no.
God, I was so annoyed.
You were.
I remember loving the arrow of many targets though. If the enemy was around other enemies, the arrow would jump up to 3 other targets doing half damage.
Oh, I think I'm with you there, but I'm also partial to arrows of roaring thunder. Explosive arrows that were devastating if used correctly. I loved it. And it might not be quite as intense, but my monk was pretty good at inflicting status effects too. If you want the ultimate low maintenance class, look no further than the monk, specifically the Way of the Open Hand. This subclass is all about punching the shit out of someone with style. At level 3, Rose gained access to Flurry of Blows and its 3 unique variants, Flurry of Blows Topple, Stagger, and Push. These attacks cost 1 key point and a bonus action to perform a 2-hit combo, with each variant having a chance to inflict a condition as well. At level 6, monks can gain Manifestation of Mind, Body, and Soul, which give them jazz hands, but if I'm being real, I didn't use them that much. At level 9, she learns Key Resonation Punch. Striking a creature with this will see their key resonating, you know, as the name implies, with it pairing well with Key Resonation Blast, a move that tickled every itch I had. So the Resonation Punch costs an action or even a bonus action for double the fun, but the Blast only costs a key point, meaning that it can be used at the end of the monk's turn after all other actions have been spent, maximizing the amount of enemies that can have their key resonating, turning them all into walking key bombs. Ugh, I love it so much. Other abilities monks unlock are the Step of the Wind, Dash, and Disengage, which let Rose use a key point and bonus action to either move across the field or run away without triggering a foe's reaction attack, like those opportunity attacks. Oh man, and Stunning Strike, this move hits an enemy and has the chance to inflict the stun status on the target, meaning the target can't take an action, bonus action, or reactions, allowing Rose to shut down enemies if she can get a good Judy chop in. And back on the low maintenance class thing, monks gain movement bonus and extra AC for not wearing armor. Plus, there's Stillness of Mind, which allows them to immediately get rid of the Charmed or Frightened status effect. Purity of Body, which makes them immune to poison and other passive features when making unarmed attacks. From here, it's time we jumped into multi-classing. Specifically, we go into Rogue and then the Thief subclass, allowing Rose to have 2 bonus actions. And if we remember, the Flurry moves run off of bonus actions, which now means she can strike someone up to 4 times per round using bonus actions alone. By endgame, I stuck Rose with the snow-dusted Monastery gloves that added 1d4 of cold damage per unarmed attack. I kinda leaned harder into Rose as a glass cannon by giving her the horns of the Berserker helmet, which adds 2 necrotic damage to any unarmed attack as long as she doesn't have full health, as well as +2 to attack rolls against creatures that have also taken damage. The risk comes from the helmet taking a 1d4 of necrotic damage if Rose didn't deal damage in a turn. Luckily, she was constantly throwing hands, so it was rarely a problem. Those were the only pieces of equipment that stand out on Rose aside from a pair of boots that gave her Misty Step, and those stayed on for the whole playthrough.
Now, as much as I love Mommy Karlach, I didn't do her much justice due to how green I was in the first playthrough. She didn't go down easily though. She was a Barbarian with the Berserker subclass, which allowed her to go into a Frenzy state. While in this state, as long as she attacks every turn, she gains Frenzied Strike and Enraged Throw, while also being able to use an improvised melee weapon as a bonus action. She has resistance to physical damage and advantage on strength checks and saving throws. Believe it or not though, that's all she has. She screams, she attacks, she wins. It's literally that simple.
God, she hits like a fucking truck. I love her.
At level 5, she gets the extra attack, and with her feats, I chose Savage Attacker, Great Weapon Master, and honestly, I can't remember what the third one was. It worked out, and that's all I know. As far as equipment goes, I think the most noteworthy weapon was the Sword of Chaos.
Control!
Are you done?
Oh, whatever, you set me up too well.
So anyway, the Sword of Shadow the Hedgehog deals 2d6 plus the strength modifier and 1d4 necrotic damage, on top of healing the user for 1d6 anytime they hit something. That little combo alone made Karlach extremely self-sufficient. The Amulet of Greater Health from Raphael's House of Kinks sets the wearer's constitution to 23 no matter what, so her health pool ran deep.
So there's no secret weapon or stacking the odds in your favor with criticals? Or maybe a crucial piece of armor that you have to jump through hoops to get her to work?
Nah man, she's just a vibe.
Shit, alright.
Now, Nikki was probably the most experimental character I've had in all my playthroughs.
Dude, no kidding. What was it? She started off as a druid, but you didn't like the transforming thing. Then you swapped to a paladin, but it was the evil bitches, so you didn't really want to go through the Oathbreaker stuff. But then I think you finally stuck with the fighter, right?
Oh yeah, and man, I don't regret that at all. This bitch will curb stomp you.
Hey, hold up. You stole my look at some...
It's okay. Alright, let's mix things up and get the armor out of the way first. In Act 1, you can obtain the Adamantient Splint Armor in the Adamantium Forge after beating Grimm. This armor eliminates the chance of the character receiving a critical hit, and just like that, Nikki had her in-game armor. For boots, she went with the Helldusk boots. They exempt anyone who wears them from any type of negative terrain effect, as well as being unable to be forcefully moved by a foe's spells or actions. It also comes with the Infernal Evasion perk, meaning if I fail a saving throw, I have the option to sacrifice a reaction in order to pass it. Holy f***, I'm still going. It also gives her a version of Misty Step that spawns fire at the chosen destination. The Helm of Baldur was my favorite because it heals the user at the start of every turn in combat, and you also can't be stunned. With weapons, the aesthetic I wanted was using great swords as much as possible.
Aesthetic?
Yes, I'm very much a fashion souls girly, so it matters a lot.
This is true.
I end up switching between the Sword of Chaos and Baldur's Giant Slayer. Baldur's Giant Slayer is a legendary greatsword that receives a double damage bonus from strength, as well as advantage on attack rolls against large, huge, and gargantuan creatures. Needless to say, I had all my bases covered. Now the class and subclass are what make this build special. On top of the extra attack at level 5, the fighter class receives an additional extra attack at level 11. For those living on Sesame Street, that's 3 attacks per turn. Not to mention, the fighter has Action Surge, which unlocks at level 2, allowing them to take another action in that turn. Say it with me, Elmo, this all adds up to 6 attacks in a single turn. I went with I settled with the Battlemaster subclass. I gave the other 2 a try, but I really didn't care for them that much. The Battlemaster class has superiority dice that allows them to make special attacks that can disarm, frighten, trip, and even distract enemies if the attack lands and the target fails their saving throw. These special moves are called maneuvers, and they cost a superiority dice to perform.
These superiority dice are like the fighter's class-specific resource?
Not the fighter, the Battlemaster subclass in particular, but yes.
Okay.
They regain these expended superiority dice after a short or long rest, and the higher level the character is, the more superiority dice you obtain, with their potency increasing as well. I liked having all these options because it was cool, first and foremost, but it was also extremely effective. Damage numbers were consistently staggering, on top of Nikki being a queen and applying negative status effects to certain enemies. It just added an extra layer of strategy to her kit, and by extension, every fight she was a part of.
The last ingredient I can think to mix into this combat stew are the Illithid powers. Obtained by finding tadpole samples in the overworld, or elite absolute cultists will have them on their corpses, the party shares these resources, so co-op groups will have to ration these little alien sperm out. It is totally optional, meaning one party member can be as mind-flayed as they want, while the others are as pure as the driven snow. Srein dilly-dallied with their potential, but Rose, living that monk life, never really went for it. I mainly stuck to Forced Tunnel because of my perpetual hard-on for pushing people in this game. Yes! But there's so much more these powers can offer. They all come in different tiers. The inner brain abilities are situational at worst and potentially game-changing at best. It really depends on when and where you use them. Tanyth frequented Charmed, which would keep any attacker from swinging at him for the rest of their turn, while Psionic Backlash, a reaction, inflicts 1d4 of psychic damage to any foe that casts a spell. Outside of combat, Favorable Beginnings is the best passive the Illithid tree has to offer. Tanyth already has Riz for days, but with Favorable Beginnings, the first choice of a dialogue will have a proficiency bonus added to Persuasion, Intimidate, or a Deception check, bringing another +4 on top of all his other charisma buffs. Nikki, however, was eventually invested in every Illithid power she had access to, and this is when the ability Cull the Weak shines. But before we get into that, let's take a look at the Tier 2 Illithid abilities. At the end of Act 2, the Emperor gives the player the choice to consume an Astral Touch Tadpole. This grants the character access to the Tier 2/Outer Brain abilities. The biggest downside to this upgrade is that your character begins to look like a space crackhead. Oh, I don't like the way my guy looks.
But the powers obtained, man, it's so worth it. The abilities used frequently by Tanyth were Free Cast, which allowed him to not spend a spell charge once per long rest, Mind Sanctuary, which creates a magical nexus that allows those within to take actions and bonus actions interchangeably, and Fly, which as you may guess, lets you fly wherever you want. Nikki had all these abilities as well, but the only one that made sense for her to spam was Fly because, you know. But other noteworthy abilities were Psionic Dominance, which completely shuts down an enemy spell, Black Hole, which gathers enemies to a certain area and gives them the slow condition, and last but not least, Displacer Beast Shape. This is by far the coolest ability. The character turns into this 3 tentacle-tailed panther that can make clones of itself and swipe at foes within its range, swap places with targets while also dealing damage and creating a clone in the process. They can also just spawn these clones, and you can have a lot of these guys around if you play your cards right. Now, all these abilities are awesome, but the MVP of Illithid powers, hands down, is Cull the Weak. Cull the Weak is a passive feature you can turn on or off. When the target's hit points are taken below the character's number of evolved Illithid powers, that creature dies and all nearby creatures take 1 to 4 psychic damage. You can have up to 26 Illithid powers in the game, so if you attack an enemy and their health drops down to 25, it's instant death. And if they happen to be near another enemy, they take 1 to 4 psychic damage, and potentially putting their health below 26, and whoops, there's another instant death. With Nikki being a fighter and finding herself in the middle of a mosh pit more often than not, this passive, along with her turns that can have 6 attacks at times, was icing on the cake.
Nah, she was a killing machine for sure, but all that equipment came into play to make Nikki one of our many powerhouses. Now that I think about it, we had a lot of cool equipment we came across through both playthroughs.
Hell yeah, we did. But here's the question. Was the equipment itself the reward? Or did you have more fun completing the wacky trials to get the equipment?
Yes, I was wondering if that was just me. Like the crossbow you can forge in the Steelwatch factory, there's a table that allows you to combine items in the office past the main hall. It's hinted at in a memo, but if you can find all the correct parts laying around the factory and combine them here, you can forge the Hellfire Engine crossbow. A great ranged weapon that we let Shadowheart hang on to because she didn't really have a great long-range option. There was the Blood of Lathander, a holy mace that required we maneuver the entire party through this stealth section. And then thankfully, we had already found this item called the Dawn Master's Crest, which unlocked the shrine and gave it to us. It would have been pretty awkward if we hadn't found that already.
Oh, and the magical heist in the first playthrough? In the lower section of Baldur's Gate, there's a magical emporium called the Sorcerer's Sundries. So we walk into the store and immediately get a bad vibe, with this woman telling us that they have a vault that no one's allowed inside. Immediately, we turned the building upside down trying to find it until we got an inkling that it was in the office. The only problem was there are animated suits of armor and the owner staring right at us. Thus, we had Srein talk to the owner in suits, while Tanyth snuck into the office because that's just something you can do in this beautiful game. Inside the office, Tanyth activates a portal which takes him to a maze of corridors and doors, eventually finding the Annals of Karsus.
Oh yeah, that was the nerd book that annoying coworker Gale needed.
Well, that ass's book cursed my boy, but when we got it removed, it gave him 20 temporary health points per long rest.
See, happy endings all around. In the Grimforge, we mentioned in Nikki's breakdown that the player can craft a few pieces of great equipment thanks to the molds scattered around the area. The player simply has to scavenge for chunks of adamantine. I'm pretty sure you can only find 3 though, so this means you have to decide what equipment you want from the forge. We went with the splint heavy armor, and it was so worth it, although we did take Nir's boots in both playthroughs. The disintegrating Nightwalkers, which are the ones that gave the wearer a free Misty Step, the ones that Rose had the entire second playthrough. Those boots of speed we got from the dying Deep Gnome lady in the Underdark stayed on Tanyth the entire time too, giving him click heals, which doubles the movement for the wearer.
Ugh, it was so nice to have that. And I remember looting the Helldusk armor from Raphael, which we gotta talk about that fight. We gave it to Shadowheart, giving her the ability to fly and immediately increased her armor class to 21. Oh, and how about that genie?
That was so unexpected, but god, so entertaining. I went over it in the story summary, but it can't be understated how crazy it is that you can catch this immortal genie for cheating at a f***ing state fair, and he banishes you to the land before time. Nikki was the one who got banished, and she intentionally avoided the enemies there just so she could grab Nyrula, a legendary trident that does great damage, but its biggest plus was its Zephyr connection. That's a fancy way of saying that if it's thrown, it will reappear in your hand ready to be thrown again. Rose was already big on throwing weapons throughout the second playthrough, so it only made sense that she have what's essentially the best thrown weapon in the game. It also explodes in thunder energy on contact, damaging surrounding enemies. But it does hurt friendlies, so just be careful of that.
Yeah, thanks, Dick.
Get over it. What good is the cool equipment if you don't have anything challenging to use it on?
Or it was at least fun to get.
True that. The whole Worm Rocks prison section was full of those. To enter the dungeon in the first place, the player has to attack these dragon statues with lightning damage, which revealed the entrance.
Are you worthy?
And from there, the statue of Baldur gives the party 4 trials to pass, but it eventually culminated with the big battle with Answer.
This big-ass undead dragon has 600 hit points, which is the second largest health pool in the game. And this boy brings on the lightning. Every couple rounds he'll charge up his lightning storm move, and it covers the entire battlefield with bolts. There are these crystals all over the place that party members can get behind. These block the attack, but only once. Luckily, we had a couple of scrolls of Globe of Invulnerability in our back pocket. This spell does exactly what you think. It creates a transparent globe, and any character standing in it is immune to all incoming damage. That doesn't mean anything if he knocks someone off the stage, though.
Oh.
At the end of each round, he activates Gathering Energy, flying high above the battlefield and becoming immune to damage. After another turn or two, he unleashes the energy and will wipe the party if you're not prepared.
Thank God for the globe.
This battle made us use every trick we had in our arsenal.
Yeah, this was the one that made me happy I picked up Alchemy in the second playthrough. Sidebar, but come to find out, if you press H on the keyboard, you can bring up a whole ass Alchemy menu. Had no idea about this in the first playthrough, but Rose's scavenging became useful once again as she could craft all kinds of offensive bombs, as well as potions that grant passive bonuses. These spore grenades became one of my favorites. I got some use out of them, but never more than in this fight. These grenades create an area of effect, and whoever steps in the cloud gains an additional action for the remainder of the current round, and that cloud stays around for 3 turns.
Then I used my Mind Sanctuary ability to make actions and bonus actions interchangeable, making it to where everyone could attack Answer 4 times bare minimum.
This boss battle sticks out in our minds due to the sheer terror Answer brings to the table, but with the right coordination and a little bit of luck, he'll eventually come down.
The Stillwatch Titan that can be found at the core of the Stillwatch Foundry isn't the most flashy fight, but it can make you break a sweat. One of its most annoying abilities is where it hunkers down and raises its defenses up to where you have to roll at least 60 damage to even hurt it. And the fact that he can also send a barrage of missiles while in turtle mode made him last a little longer than we'd like. There's also elite Stillwatchers in the room with him, and they spew out Infernal Fire, which does a lot of damage even if you're just standing in it. That bow was so worth the pain though.
Then there's Lil Enver. So this fight was fun due to the achievement that it's tied to. His little hiding hole is covered in traps, and the goal is to kill him without setting any of them off during the battle. We used Astarion to sneak in and destroy all the traps before beginning the encounter, after which Shadowheart laid her blade barrier spell all the way across the throne room. Luckily, Gortash and all of his cronies just continued to walk right through them, even though they could have walked slightly to the left or right to be free of them.
Oh my god.
Holy sh**. Hope my game doesn't crash. Astarion then put some spike growth on the other exit just in case they got smart enough to use that door. They never did. Tactician mode, ladies and gentlemen. The Grimforge fight was unique because of the gimmick of the fight. The Iron Giant's defense is nigh impenetrable, so to weaken it, molten lava has to flood the arena. And while the thing is nice and hot, he has to be lured to the center, putting him right underneath a huge mechanized hammer for a good old... We'd have each character on a corner of the stage, and whoever was diagonally across from the dude would attack, activating his targeting systems. This would waste all of his movement as he chases down whoever, and he'd conveniently stop while being under the bonk machine. Rinse and repeat 2 or 3 more times and bro falls like a bag of rocks. Slightly next to the Grimforge was a fight against this lava elemental. It's not as big of a deal as the other fights we're talking about, but I did enjoy the workaround we used to beat him. This monster would continually heal itself by making pools of lava. No matter how hard the ladies hit this thing, he would always come back from the brink. To circumvent this, Nikki used Bone Shield, which, if you'll remember, stops creatures from recovering health by any means. I thought it was neat. Auntie Ethel's first encounter wasn't anything to write home about. She splits herself into copies, but only one of them is truly her, blah blah blah. But what's cool about this dungeon is the climb down right before the fight with her. There are these vents that are spewing out noxious gas, and if a character steps inside one of these clouds, they can become poisoned. But my alchemy-loving ass had a solution, and that was to craft a potion of Featherfall. Using this baby, Rose could clear the entire gauntlet in seconds. I love alchemy in this game. There are a few large-scale battles throughout the course of the game, but they all play out the same way more or less. The battle for the Emerald Grove, the invasion of Moonrise Tower, but none compare to the final rush to the Netherbrain at the end of the game. Depending on how things go in the story, a number of characters will be placed under the player's control for this assault. Namely, Illithid Orpheus with some nasty Illithid attacks. Same goes for the Emperor if you go down his path. There isn't a lot to go over here since we've covered the battle mechanics and strategies in such depth. It's just a really cool but tough fight.
Then we come to the boss fight to end all boss fights. If the player makes it to the end of House of Hope, the only thing they have to do after that is defeat the house's master, Raphael himself. I f***ing love this fight. The gimmick are these 4 pillars in the corner of the room. While these are active, Raph's attacks gain an additional 4 to 48 fire damage and a plus 12 to any dexterity check. And you might be thinking that Tanyth is busted enough to carry us through this fight, but no. Raphael, on top of having the highest HP pool of any creature in the game,
That infernal devil!
he also has some ridiculous attacks that are able to wipe out our Sorcerer Twink in a single turn.
Raphael isn't alone though. I mentioned that Yrgir is back at his side by this point, and he also is joined by Karlach. Plus, all these devils show up too. I thought I had an ace in the hole with Shadowheart's Divine Intervention. Once a cleric reaches level 12, they gain access to this ability to use once in the entire playthrough. We tested it out a few times and reloaded the save when it didn't quite work out, but this time, we're nuking this jerk off for 8 to 80 damage. Why did it just do 1,000 damage to Shadowheart? Well, that was unexpected. Turns out those pillars also give Raphael a reaction called Punish Divinity. This will immediately cast Infernal Sun at anything that harms him with radiant damage. I don't think it did 1,000 damage, but it did 100 something. It was enough to put Shadowheart down completely. Eventually the battle is won, and man, what a battle it is. Not only because of its status as probably the hardest optional encounter in the game, even above Mr. Answer, but mainly because of that musical track that plays during the fight. It's like a demonic ballad sung by Raphael himself. It's so enchanting and befitting a narcissist such as himself. This fight deserves to be in top 10 boss battles of all time lists on YouTube now. Baldur's Gate 3 was in development for 9 years. I want you to really think about that for a second. 9 years of a studio's life was consumed by one single project. Elden Ring took 5 years.
Final Fantasy 16 was in the oven for 7 years.
Right. Well, yeah, not as long. That's still an impressive amount of time to spend on one thing. None of these projects, including BG3, are perfect. I mentioned my gripes with a few of the narrative elements, and I think its largest issue is its visual ambition, with the fidelity it targets often leading the frame rate to tread water. It can get bad when several graphical effects go off in combat, but exploration is often hampered by poor performance. The city of Baldur's Gate was kinda pointed at around the game's launch for having trouble keeping a solid frame rate. There were moments for me when a creature died and the camera flies through the ground after they're defeated, and this isn't me trying to deflect any criticism that can be lobbied at the game. I just spent around 3 hours telling you about what I loved and a few things that could have been better, but what I'm trying to get across here is that the few things Baldur's Gate 3 stumbled upon are eclipsed by literally everything else it does astonishingly well. Just to speak on the other side of the visuals real quick, I've never seen such an ambitious RPG. Not only is nearly every line of dialogue voiced, with the narrator Amelia Tyler even revealing that different origin characters have completely different narration styles, but there are also unique mocapped animations in just about every conversation. That is unheard of for an RPG or just game in general of this length. The cast, animators, directors, sound engineers, everyone on that side of the team should feel so proud of their work here. I don't know if we'll see a better looking game that has this much visual variety anytime soon. I think it speaks volumes to the team's dedication to making every corner, every playstyle, every dialogue branch, every puzzle, every choice feel unique to that player's playthrough. For as long as this video is, for as in-depth as we went on so many aspects of this game as we did today, we've barely scratched the surface. As you could probably guess, there are virtually thousands of permutations on how events can play out. There are quests that we still never finished. There are recruitable party members that we didn't even touch on, like Minthara or Minsk. Aspects of our favorite characters that we never got into. Mechanics we never touched on. Yay! There are videos I've been seeing since this game came out that shine a light on aspects of this game I would have never considered. Character builds that allow people to kinda recreate their favorite characters in the game. Videos that demonstrate how this game can be bent over backwards. And most importantly, ways in which Gale can be bullied. Bottom line, Baldur's Gate 3 is one of those games that is next to impossible to totally cover in a single video. I know a lot of you probably think this video was overkill, especially for how we went in depth on our builds. I would say, first of all, have you not watched a video on this channel before? And second of all, blame Nick.
Sorry.
But it just goes to show you how worth it this game is. The amount of content you have waiting on you is unbelievable, with depth in both story and characters to an almost comical degree. Combat that is slightly intimidating at first, but so deep and so rewarding to a newcomer of this genre. I would say that something is lost if a full group of friends attempts to play this game. There's no room for any of the origin characters in the party, so a lot of the small moments simply don't happen. I'm sure it's still a lot of fun to coordinate with 3 other buddies and tackle the challenges as they come, but I'd say 2-player co-op is really where this game shines. Having a friend to experience this entire journey with is something special. Going through the ups and downs as they come, the characters, the combat, everything, it's a great time, and I cannot recommend this game enough.
And I do want to thank you for watching to the end of this video, this 3-hour-long behemoth that we put together. I also can't say enough how much I appreciate this channel reaching 10,000 subscribers. The number is, like, it doesn't even register in my mind. It blows me away every single time. But I also want to thank my best friend Nick for helping me to write it. And I'm looking at the script because I'm really horrible at memorizing this shit, but also I'm really hope that you had fun time writing it and acting in it now, dude.
Yeah, dude.
And is there anything else you want to say about the game or about me and how much you hate me or whatever?
So I don't hate you.
Oh, cool.
But you know, we'll get to you later. But game wise, I mean, you know, like we said, with everything that they do with the characters and with how much time and effort Larian Studios has put into this game, I hope the time and effort we've put into this video reflects on just how wonderful and grand this game is. You know, we did kind of go all over the place, but one thing is, like,
it can't be helped.
Yeah, every playthrough with anybody, even both of our playthroughs, were unique in their own ways, and you know, just give the game a shot. It definitely deserved Game of the Year, and everything through it is just a 10 out of 10.
All right. I appreciate you guys for watching, so thanks for stopping by.
Oh, and well, what do you normally say?
Have a great day.
Have a great day.
Have a great day.
Have a great
and
day.
Thanks for 10K subs. Bye-bye.
Also, if you guys are, like, sick of me, just let them know.
Don't let me know. I don't give a f. Bye.
Bye.